Honorable Decima Williams, President of the Senate, Honorable Delma Thomas, Minister of Mental Health, Wellness, Religious Affairs, Youth and Sports, Mr. Tillman Thomas, former Prime Minister, Reverend Osbert James, Reverend Dr. John Lewis, Reverend Josephine Romaine, Permanent Secretary of Mental Health, Wellness and Religious Affairs, Mrs. Naomi Jeremiah, Permanent Secretary of Youth and Sports, Ms. Kim Frederick, Dr. Niels Chaitan, feature speaker, Mr. Tyrone Buckmeyer, and Ms. Amanda Mitchell, moderators, participants of Family Consultation 2025, representing the church, civil society, students, the media, and government, ladies and gentlemen, students, members of the collaborating groups of Family Consultation 2025, the staff of the Ministry of Mental Health, Wellness, Religious Affairs, Youth, and Sports. Good morning, everybody. And we are here for a very, very special occasion. And Psalm 111, verse 3 says, "If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do?" It's a question. And 4 things. We can pray or seek the Lord. We can get together, unite. We can consolidate people and resources, and we can rebuild it. And that feeds directly into our theme for today, which is healing families and redeeming sexuality. And I think we can all appreciate the fact that the family and the proper understanding and practice of human sexuality are foundations upon which any successful nations are built. So this morning, as we begin, I will invite to the podium Sister Elizabeth Forsyth, who will begin at the first point to pray. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Hector. Good morning, everyone. Shall we stand, please, for prayer? Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. Heavenly Father, we bow in your presence this morning in the precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ, and through the power of your Holy Spirit. Lord, we thank you for your mercies towards us. You have brought us here safely. You also, mighty God, have allowed us to gather here for the express purpose of pulling our thoughts and our ideas together for the benefit of our nation, our families, our children. Father, we cannot do this in ourselves. And we recognize, Almighty God, that you are able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above all that we may ask or even think. And Lord God, this morning I pray that as we consult, as we deliberate, as we listen, as we share, oh God, that your Spirit will work among us. That, Lord, new ideas will flow, that you would cause us, mighty God, to be able to be empowered to help our nation. There are situations, mighty God, that seem to be out of our control, but you are always in control. And so, Father, this morning, have your divine way. I pray, oh God, that we will be individually touched and moved, Almighty God, to act on the matters that would be presented before us, oh God. That we would join our hearts and our minds and our efforts together to bring praise, honor, and glory unto your name. I pray for a special anointing upon each individual who has to share. I pray, Almighty God, that the presence of your Spirit will be so real that if we would have come in here with burdens and issues that relate to our own individual lives, that you will move upon us. You will do for us that which we cannot do for ourselves. For we put our trust in you, O God. And as we join our hearts together, we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for your cooperation.
Okay, you may be seated. And of course, I do have to also make very special, recognition of Dame Joan Purcell, Sister Joan Purcell, whatever name we may call her on occasion. But the thing is, God has used her to birth where we are this morning, right? And let's just appreciate, Sister Joan for her willingness to be obedient to the Lord, right? So at this point, I will ask the Minister of Mental Health, Wellness, and Religious Affairs, Youth and Sports, Honorable Delma Thomas, to make some brief remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Former Prime Minister, Mr. Tillman Thomas, Reverend Osbert James, Permanent Secretary of Mental Health, Ms. Naomi Jeremiah, Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Ms. Kim Frederick, Dr. Nils Scheiton, our 50th speaker. So I should acknowledge those on the head table because the protocol list here has a lot of names who's not present. So let me just say good morning to every one of you.
Yes. Good morning.
It is indeed a privilege and an honor to be part of this consultation, healing families and redeeming sexuality. I first must commend Sister Joan Purcell, who's the brainchild of this very important initiative. This theme touches the very heart of who we are as a people and as a nation. It speaks to our deepest hope, our greatest struggles, and our shared responsibility to protect the sacred bond that begins in the home, the family. When I reflect on our nation today, I see both the beauty of resilience and the pain of brokenness. Families across Grenada, Carriacou, and Pidi Martinique are doing their best, some under very trying circumstances. Parents are stretched thin. Children are growing up in a world of confusion, and the moral compass that once guided so many of us seems to be spinning in a different direction. The truth is, we have a lot of teenage mothers, and that too is a serious issue. But the issue of teenage mother didn't happen overnight. Sometimes we are made to believe that the world changed so differently, and so the things that are happening now are things that didn't happen before, and that is not factual. I always use myself as an example. My mother had 3 children by the age of 18. That speaks to just one household. And when you look within your communities, there are many more like that. And yet I believe there is hope. Hope that we can rebuild, restore, and redeem what has been damaged. Hope that together, as a government, as faith leaders, as parents, as citizens, we can help families to heal, not by preaching perfection, but by walking alongside them with empathy, understanding, and love. You see, we speak perfection when it doesn't come home. So we say we are perfect and we preach that. But the truth is, when it affects our home, sometimes we hide it under the carpet because we are human. And so there are issues that are going to confront us on a daily basis. And so we must deal with it heads on. This consultation is not just another event on the calendar. It is a part of a broader, deliberate movement, one that this government fully supports, to place family, faith, and wellness at the center of national development. And I'm happy that in the room we have a lot of members from like faith-based organizations, because I believe that as the church, as Christians, we also have a serious part to play. A part to not only stay in the church on the Saturdays and the Sundays or on the prayer meeting sessions and those intercessions that you have at the church, but also be able to go out in the communities and assist with the issues that affect family daily. As the minister responsible for mental health, wellness, and religious affairs, I can assure you that we recognize the issues that are present, emotional health, moral grounding, and we want to ensure that we have family stability. When families are whole, children flourish. When homes are safe and loving, communities are stronger. And when men and women are mentally and spiritually well, our nation prospers. This is why the government has been intentional in investing in initiatives that support family well-being and community healing. We have strengthened our mental health responses, taking counseling and psychosocial support beyond hospital walls and into communities, schools, and churches. We have partnered with faith-based organizations and social workers to address issues of domestic violence, parenting challenges, and sexual abuse, not from a place of condemnation, but with compassion and rehabilitation at the center. This consultation today aligns perfectly with that vision, because healing families also means confronting difficult topics, including sexuality, with courage, truth, and love. For too long, discussion about sexuality have been shrouded in shame, secrecy, and silence. But silence only breeds pain. If we are serious about healing, we must create a safe space where people, especially our young people, can understand who we are, talk about their struggles, and find guidance grounded in both faith and facts. As a government, we are committed to working hand in hand with the church, community leaders, to ensure that moral and mental wellness remain intertwined. The ministry will continue to sponsor and support programs like this, consultations, workshops, and outreach sessions, because we see them as investment in human soul of this nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the family is not a relic of the past. It is the heart of our future. Every policy we make, every program we design must ultimately be about the human being beyond the numbers. The mothers trying to raise their children with dignity, the fathers seeking a purpose, the youth searching for identity, and the elders yearning to see the moral values that they once knew restored. Let this consultation not only be about dialogue, but about a renewed national commitment, a movement that starts in this room and spread in every village, every church, and every home, and even in the schools. Let us commit to listening more, judging less, and loving harder. Let us model what healing looks like in how we speak to each other, how we forgive, how we care, and how we lead. And as I close, I want to thank the organizers, the facilitators, and every participant here today. You are part of something deeply meaningful. The Ministry of Mental Health, Wellness, and Religious Affairs stands with you, not just in words, but in action. We will continue to provide support, resources, and platforms that empower family and reinforce more moral and spiritual foundation of our beloved Grenada. May this consultation be renewed. May it inspire courage, and may it ignite a wave of healing that reaches every corner of a tri-island state. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Minister, and we certainly appreciate those comments as you highlighted the fact of the soul of Grenada, which is so critical for our own development, and this becoming a movement of people and resources to reclaim what has been lost. I just want to also recognize we have some TAMCC students. I see some students in our midst, and I think it's really good that we recognize and applaud them, right? So there is an intergenerational gathering here, and that's really commendable. Just one observation as well. I just briefly counted about 10 males and about 36 females, right? I will not make a commentary on the numbers or the gender mix, but yeah, we talking family, right? So we really are praying for greater representation of men at all levels of society, all right? For the men here? All right. Excellent, excellent. So at this point, I will ask the president of Agape and Dorcas Foundation, Dame Joan Purcell, to make some brief remarks. That's welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Minister, I am so moved that you are here with us this morning. I really appreciate your presence and your unstinting support of the nation as a whole and families and individuals. The protocol has already been established, and I just want to say good morning to all the esteemed participants here, and especially our young people. I have looked forward today with much prayer, fear, and trembling. Some of the things I'm about to say I've wept over, worked through, and wrote about. Today I'm asking for permission to speak truth from what I hope is a place of love, humility, integrity, and a deep sense of shared responsibility. The family is the primary battleground in every society, and it is thus the place where we commit the gravest mistakes and experience the greatest failures, some knowingly, some unknowingly. Our broken homes, unfaithful spouses, divorces, single parents, stand testimony of the crises. Our human sexuality, something spiritual and sacred, as well as emotional and physical, has been degraded even as we watched its normalized destruction and ignored its descent into evil. Every act of rape, incest, pedophilia, pornography, sex trafficking, teenage pregnancy, lust, fornication, and adultery is a perversion of the sex act and of who we are as God-created sexual beings. Every abortion is a destruction of life, an abuse of God's gift of oneness and procreation. And despite the pride we take in having a law against abortion, we pay no real attention to its rampant illegal practice and the tragic personal and family cost, as well as cost to the state in healing the trauma of broken lives resulting from unfinished abortion. We focus on the homosexual agenda, and with some cause, while we ignore the heterosexual crisis, the crisis of sexual relations that we don't speak about, and that grows and thrives among us and is the basis of most of our problems. We are called here today to honestly face our pain and pressing realities. What is happening in our broken families? What's happening to our men who feel emasculated and angry, and our women who feel disempowered and revengeful? Our youth who often feel purposeless and denigrated, and our children who feel endangered and ignored? How do we move toward healing, wholeness, and redemption? We can only do so together under God. The vision for this coming together came from the hearts of 4 indigenous groups of women. So it wasn't only myself. Agape Foundation, formed in 2007 and involved in personal leadership and community training and development. Ant Foundation, a grateful family who received help and sought to pay it forward by giving back to others in the community who need help. Dorcas Foundation, a group of women who moved from their knees to serve with their hands and feet in the areas of acts of love, education, and advocacy. And Lighthouse Transformational Ministry that aims to impact and transform culture with the message of truth. These women, our hearts are broken about what's happening in our nation, especially to our families. As we face each other today with civility and empathy, knowledge and wisdom, not apportioning blame, not demonizing each other, but meeting in the radical middle with humility, creativity, and simplicity, we collaborate or we disintegrate. Is there any hope? I know I've sounded negative, but I think it's important to articulate the realities, which we often fail to do. But there is hope. We see individuals taking responsibility for their lives, men and women, boys and girls living purposeful, creative, flourishing lives. We see families as ecologically balanced environments of father and mother, fatherliness and motherliness, in a wonderful admixture of wisdom, kindness, patience, and forgiveness. We see husbands and wives in sexual ecstasy. Yes, we talk about sex and intimacy, dreaming big dreams of a future hope of love, faith, and hope. We see children lovingly taught and instructed in righteousness, protected and provided for, feeling safe and secure from the forces of evil all around. We see the body of Christ as salt and light, preserving truth and chasing darkness, living and loving sacrificially and reflecting goodness, beauty, and compassion inside and outside the walls, first being repentant before preaching repentance. We see the wider community serving with energy, empathy, and participatory fervor, rebuilding broken down walls and building new ones. We see civil government championing the cause of the voiceless and the powerless, being just and fair, accountable, transparent, and responsible. We see a nation of peoples brought together under God's sovereignty and forwarding together in Grenadian harmony. We see coming out of this time of meeting, of talking, of sharing of ideas, listening to each other, acknowledging our mistakes, and envisioning of a better future. We see the commitment of each one of us taking this initiative into 2026 and onwards, moving into the wider community to remind our beloved fellow countryman and woman, father and mother, teacher and student, boy and girl, that family is still first, and that the health of the nation depends on the health of the family. May God help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Impersonal. And there is hope. And your presence here today is a testimony that you believe that there is hope, right? Otherwise, you will not come. True? All right, so there is hope. So at this point, we will have a feature speaker who is Dr. Neil Chaitan, and he will be speaking on the Grenadian family. Now, Dr. Neil Straighton, PhD in Social and Behavioral Sciences. He's the founder and president of Motive 8 for Change International, a Canadian-based social skill agency. Dr. Straighton is global in his reach and impact in the US, UK, East Africa, and the Caribbean. Dr. Straighton has done exceptional work in the Caribbean in crime reduction and violence, and now has an established satellite office in St. George's, Grenada, to serve the region. He's the author of Respect Due: The Keys to Solving Crime and Violence, and Pulling the Plug, a practical guide to disarming the downward spiral of loss, grief, depression, and death. He is also the designer, copyright holder, and facilitator for the internationally acclaimed crime reduction campaign, Project Stop and Think. There is so much more that can be said of this esteemed son of the soil. Dr. Straighton and his beloved wife Patsy have 4 adult children and 6 grandchildren. Let's welcome Dr. Straighton as he comes and shares with us.
Thank you, Pastor Hector. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. I want to ask to adopt the protocol that's established. However, I would, because it's such a nostalgic moment for me, please don't mind if I mention 1 or 2 names. Because in the history of me coming back and forth here, there are people, some great people I've worked with, which I must mention, by the way. I see sitting right in front of me, Mr. Lynn McQueen, Henry, I see Mr. John, and I see my PS here, who I work with now, and of course, the Minister of Mental Health and Wellness and Youth and Sports, Mrs. Delma Thomas, someone who I've been working recently with, by the way, championing mental health across Grenada. It's my pleasure, as I said, to be here, and today I want to share with you a couple. Just discuss with you a little on of family. Before I do that, though, I must also mention an event that just happened in October of this year at the Radisson Hotel, and I see the man who championed it sitting right here. It was called the Epic Marriage Conference, of which I was one of your speakers, and it's good to see you, sir. It's also good to see, by the way, I didn't plan to call everybody name, but I cannot stop with calling the name of Decima Williams, who was the president of our Senate and a fellow Grenvilleite, right? It's good. As I'm in the mode of reminiscing and reflecting, let me take you back to 1923. It's a long time ago, by the way. 1923, the son of a farmer from Bel Air, St. Andrews, saw the daughter of a farmer. You see, the name of that, the surname of that farmer's son was Straighton. And the surname of that farmer's daughter was Nanku. And as I said the word Nanku, I know in someone here, in someone's heart, there's a glow. And who am I talking about? Our former Prime Minister, Tillman Thomas. Because we came from the same roots. You see, Tillman Thomas came from the Nanku stock, and so did I. And so I've never disclosed it publicly, but we're cousins, by the way. So be careful. I got friends in high places. And so this farmer boy whose name was Joseph, saw this farmer girl whose name was Ida or Margaret. You know, everybody in Grenada had a, and some of us didn't know what her real name was until it's time to travel. And she was called Ida at home, but her name was Margaret. And they met, and he was slain by her beauty. And that's all right, because, gentlemen, please understand, we are physical beings, we are visual beings, and we are slain by what we see. And while I'm telling you that, let me also educate you about the ladies, because they are slain by what they hear. And that's why when a guy cannot get a girl, they say he has no lyrics. He has no lyrics. And so, apparently, Joseph had some lyrics. And he persuaded my grandmother to marry her, to marry him. And of course, in those days, what would happen is that the families get together, right? And as you listen to names, you know that because we are coming from the Masons and the Chitons, which is a mix, kind of a, in those days, we had the Indian and the Negro thing going on. And so we are mixed kind of people. But in the tradition of the Indians, they used to kill a goat and have a festival. When there's a wedding coming up, they would kill a goat. I don't know why a goat, you know, and have a big festival. So, of course, there was a big festival. And they spread a canvas, and they cook all their food, and it was a celebration because Joseph was going to marry Margaret. Ladies and gentlemen, Joseph was a Christian boy. Joseph was a believer in Jesus. Amen, somebody? Yeah, I'm not preaching, but you can say amen if you want to. But so was Margaret. And so they established a home based on a common belief system. Is that important? It is very important. Critically important. And so they established a home on Christian principles. Believing in Jesus Christ, believing in the Lord, but also believing something that they passed down to us. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Joseph and Margaret, because of that time, there was no Wi-Fi. And there was no TV. So they did what gave the human beings the greatest pleasure. And if you know, if you've studied anything about sexuality, you know it's the thing, if done right. Woo, if done right. If not slam bam, thank you ma'am. But if it's done right, would really give you the highest level of pleasure. As a matter of fact, some people think they're in heaven by calling it the Lord's name in vain. But we'll go there. And ladies and gentlemen, Margaret and Joseph went to work and gave birth to Matthew, and then to Ennis. And I'm seeing my cousin Tillman Thomas smiling because he knows who I'm talking about. And then gave birth to Clifford. And then gave birth to Jeremiah, my father. Then gave birth to Milton. Then they're not stopping, it seems. And then gave birth to Abraham. Then gave birth to Uncle Dennis. Then gave birth to Isaac. And then gave birth. Still giving birth, eh? Gave birth to John. And in 1942, Joseph died. But Joseph left a family that was well positioned for success. He knew that they were going to struggle. He knew that raising a family as a single mother would not be easy. And he gave them the golden rule. And he knew if they would only practice that, that would be a foundation of which they could raise themselves and raise their families. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1954, Matthew, the first of Joseph's son, met a young lady by the name of Madonna Mason from St. James, and also was slain by her beauty, and asked her a hand in marriage. In those days, you got to write what's called the letter. Anybody heard about it? You got to write the letter, and you have to go and sit down on the big chair. They say in those days, traditionally, you even have to they gave you a dull axe to bust a galba nut. You see, my brother, Reverend, you're too young for that. You're too young for that. But that was to show the strength of the man if he could provide. And so Matthew was given the axe, apparently. And apparently he succeeded. And so he got the hand of Madonna in marriage, ladies and gentlemen. And so my dad, Jeremiah, a young man, was at his brother's wedding. And in the corner, his eyes fell on a fair damsel. She had the curves in the right place, and God bless her. A little wavy hair girl in the corner. She was the young sister of the bride. And he was the younger brother of the groom. Are you seeing the picture? And he was slain by her beauty. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1956, just after Hurricane Ivan, Janet, shortly after Hurricane Janet, Jeremiah, my father, walked up the aisles with that fair young Felicity Mason. And she became his wife. And ladies and gentlemen, passed down God, passed down Jesus, passed down the golden rule, which became the mantra of our home also. And Felicity and Jeremiah gave birth to Verlin Bernard, to Emlyn Thomas, to Niels Chaiton, to Seal Chaiton, to Lane Chaiton, to Etlin Chaiton. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am the product of Christian family. Come on, you should be clapping for that. I am the product. Ladies and gentlemen, what I've just described for you here is something we call the nuclear family. Have you heard about it? The nuclear family. You see, in those days, there were three designations of family, or three categories. One, the nuclear family. That's the traditional nuclear family. And Dr. Chaiton, why do you say the traditional nuclear family? Because there is no another nuclear family. And I'm coming there. I'm coming there. The traditional nuclear family was a married couple with children. Male and female with children. That was a traditional nuclear family. Then at that time, the next category was, of course, the single parent family. And it talks about itself. Who is a single parent? Someone who's raising children all by themselves. And that could be a male or a female. And then, of course, we have the third one. In those days, I'm talking about, in the days of yesteryear, we had the extended family. And the extended family could make up of any kind of composition. Grandma, auntie, uncle, who all came together, lived together, cohabitated, and raised children, a family together. Ladies and gentlemen, well, hello. This is the 21st century. And there's no doubt that there are some new social constructs evolving. Have you heard? Ladies and gentlemen, we have moved from 3 categories to 10. So let me help you here. The first category is a nuclear family, but not the traditional one. The nuclear family, the easy definition is 2 parents and children. You getting that? 2 parents and children. Could you think of some combinations? I'm sure you could think about some combinations. The second one is a single parent family. And of course, single parent family, again, as we say, could be a father raising a child by themselves, or children by themselves, a mother by themselves. Then we have what's called a blended family. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the one that my wife and myself is spending time to work with. The blended family, we usually refer to it as the step-parent family. You know who they are? Step-parent. Then, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we have the multi-generational family. And this one speaks by itself. And that's a place where we have a lot of the social dysfunctions we see. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we don't take time to figure out the generations we have. Listen, pastors need to know that. Hey, teachers need to know that. If you don't understand who you're working with, how will you serve them? So I'm suggesting to you that right now, as we speak, we have 5 generations coexisting on the planet. 5. You see the reason for the chaos? You see the reason why we can't seem to understand? So who are the 5 generations? Number 1, baby boomers. So that's me. If you were born before 1964, you qualify. You're a baby boomer. And it simply means that you were raised by parents who live within the war, the post-war era. The fathers there are very strong-headed. You know, whether they served in the war or they did not serve in the war, they have the war mentality. When Jeremiah Chaita, my father, came to your room, you better make sure no books on the ground. You better make sure when you go to church, your shoe is polished. You better make sure, or else you will feel the wrath. Soldier mentality. Ladies and gentlemen, after the X's, we have, the baby boomers. And why would I call baby boomers? Of course, because when the soldiers came back from war and they missed their wives, it's a whole series of impregnation. That's where we came from, right? Then we have the X's. The X's were born after 64. Ladies and gentlemen, these are those, that's when tertiary education boomed, by the way. And that's where people in the baby boom generation, we were told, don't ask me no question, shut up and do it. Baby boom fathers, don't ask me no question, shut up and do it. In those days, you follow blindly or you pay. You pay dearly. And you don't tell Niels, don't ask no questions. Because I just had this kind of thing about me. I have to know why. So in Granville, Grenada, 72 Jubilee Street, which you know very well, Miss Williams, if you pass there and you hear somebody bawling, chances is me. Because my mother used to say, I'm going to give you what Polly gave the drum. And the only thing Polly gave the drum is beat. Right? But that was it. The X's, they went to high school, they went to university, tertiary education, and they came back. That's the time when the church lost us. Because at that time, you got to test God. They come back with a test tube in their hand, and they're going to put litmus paper in it. And if you turn blue, you know what it is. And you turn red, you know what it is. But you can't put God in a test tube. And so that's the time when Christianity lost a lot of us, a lot of brilliant people, because they could not test God. And then, of course, they gave birth. And by the way, the X's say, you know what, my mother and father beat me. Everything I do, they beat me. I see a boy, they beat me. Everything beat me. I would never do that to my children. So what happened? The X's decided that they won't correct their children, and so they opened a door. You see what I'm saying? And open a door. And from then, we started going downhill. All right? And then we have the postmodern millennials, of course. And the postmodern millennials, I'm coming there. following the postmodern millennials, we have the fourth one, and that is Generation Z. Oh, Americans, that cannot pronounce right, say Z, that's all right. Well, we know them as Generation Z. And then, we've exhausted the alphabet. The English alphabet, of course. So we went to the Greek alphabet. And we call the next generation, Generation Alpha. So we went back to the top, where we call it Alpha. Ladies and gentlemen, what is very important to notice is that every generation had their own hallmark characteristics. And two of the most noticeable hallmark characteristics of the last four generations was one, entitlement. Write that down. Entitlement. And two, relativism. Write that down too. Entitlement and relativism. So you talk to any of our younger children, and they say, Dad, I didn't ask you to, I wasn't asked to born, I didn't ask you to bring me here. You brought me here, so you have a right to take care of me? It's an entitlement thing. Now we have more than anything else, sibling rivalry for parents' land and houses than ever. Because you owe me something. And let's quickly, relativism. Ladies and gentlemen, relativism is just another form of what we call situational ethics. The way I see it is the way it is. Any way I interpret it, that's my right. I have a right to that. As a result, absolute truth has left the room. Absolute truth has left the room. You see, in the nuclear family, traditional nuclear family, there is right or wrong, male or female, mother or father, older brother and younger one. But now, it's the way I feel. Ladies and gentlemen, relativism has crippled our world because we can't hold anybody accountable again. It's just the way I feel. Even pedophiles are saying no. Well, God made me that way. I feel I just have an inclination for children. It is getting dangerous. And if we don't understand what I just said here, how are you going to teach children in school? When children come up against you because you say blue socks and black shoes. Hey, I come with what I have. When there is a rule. You know what is crazy though, my dear sister Williams, is that we want to be as relative as we want. And it happens with adults too. Because we go to the rostrum, we go to the altar and say, until death do us part. And as Christians, we know what the Bible says. It says there was only one reason why a man should put his wife away. You either believe or don't believe, because the Bible is absolute. Come on here. Come on here. Come on here. You guys, listen, I'm not a preacher. You're going to make me preach here today, right? It's absolute. I go to the rostrum, to the altar, and I say, before God, until death do us part. But if I cheat on her, she may. She may. Because the Bible still preaches forgiveness first. Somebody said, I heard that. Okay, that's the bad F word in the 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen. And so, what we are seeing now, I am worried that the horse is already out the gate running around. And we're trying to lock the gate now. But if I say that and I stop there, then poor Sister Priscilla, is there hope? The answer is no. Because the horse is gone. But is there hope? Yes, there is hope. There is hope. And so, ladies and gentlemen, before I sit down, I've been doing this for 25 years. And as I heard my bio, that's not a Johnny come lately. So Dr. Chatton, gentlemen, I've worked with families as a social and behavior interventionist long enough. 10 islands in the Caribbean. 10 islands. And I think I'm not qualified to come up with my own classification. So don't mind me. Let me give it to you before I leave. And you would find that all the 10 categories I gave you, you would find them in my classification. So here they are. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1, the intentional family. Write that down. Intentional family. Now, the word intentional means done deliberately. Doesn't it mean? Done deliberately. The intentional means making a decision or deciding with plan and purpose. When my grandfather went to marry my grandmother or ask, he had a plan. He knew how he was going to mind the girl. He knew that they were going to move the family from Bel Air, Mr. Thomas, that they were going to go on top of the hill somewhere. Somewhere by Sugar Hill, somewhere there. That's where Auntie Ida used to live, by the way. He had a plan. He knew. Apparently he knew how many children he made. I don't know. Family. How intentional was your decision when you said a family? The second category that I've come up with, the incidental family. The first one is the intentional. The second one is the incidental. And the word incidental simply means accidental. Or unintentional. Or without a plan. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm suggesting to you, let me quote stats now from my files. From working in Grenada for the last 5 years with families, seeing them in my office. For the last 5 years, I have found out, my files show that 8% of the families I've dealt with came from the intentional family model. Let me repeat that again. 8% of the families I see, if you see something different, quote your stats. Go ahead. Of the families that are in crisis that come to my office, 8% come from the intentional. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when they come to my office, I got to do an assessment, of course. We got to go way back to find out where you found love, where you found it. And many times, all the problems we see, most of the problems, sorry, let me be careful. Let me be very careful here. Most of the problems we see with our students in school, because I work in every high school in Grenada, every single one, they call me to intervene. Ladies and gentlemen, most of the problems come from families that are not intentional, but incidental. That means no plan was made. We became a family. Consequently, she got pregnant, or he, whatever it is, and continues and continues. When we get to that situation, ladies and gentlemen, there is a whole repertoire of consequences that comes with it. I'm happy to let you know today that out of Joseph and Margaret, family with 9 boys and 1 girl. Although he died when my dad was 12. They produced butchers, licensed watchmakers, that's my dad. Hotel workers. And of course, after Joseph died, she married again. And she brought my last uncle, all right, to Mr. Thomas, Uncle Gus, who was in the hotel business. They produced powerful people, watch this, who never got divorced, hold on, and never ended in the hands of the police. Grandpa, thank you. Hold on. Then came Mr. Chaitin in Grenville. And Mr. Chaitin made 3 boys and 3 girls. Verlin Bernard, the first one, a school principal. Emmeline Chaitin, Nurse Thomas. That's who she is. Dr. Niels Chaitin, social and behavioral scientist. Seal Chaitin from Concord, a mechanical engineer. Lane Chaitin, a former road engineer. And Etlin Chaitin, the last one, a businesswoman in Canada. None ever got in the hands of the police. And then, ladies and gentlemen, 41 years ago, as I come to a close, 43 years ago, I went to Toronto, Canada. And I thought I was a big man now. Time to follow in my grandpa and daddy's footstep. So I came searching. You hear the word searching? That word is not an incidental. That's an intentional. I went searching for a girl. And I wanted one that loved Jesus. Amen. Amen. That's the first thing. The second thing, when I ask her, where are you from? She must say home. And home must be spelt Greenada. And I was a gospel trumpet player. The story is nice, by the way. I won't get into it. And she was a gospel singer, tenor voice in a big choir, celebrity choir in Toronto. And we happened to play in the same concert that night. And Lord have mercy, when she walked onto stage, I saw the bumps and the curves. Did you hear what I say? Remember I told you before, men are visual. You don't love somebody like that. You like what you see. You're attracted. This foolishness about falling in love, that's garbage. Can I come again? And we even sing it too. Falling in love, shut up. Don't you know the word falling is accidental? You want to fall? Well, fall. Somebody's going to get damaged. So falling in love, as a matter of fact, I'm writing it. It's going to be published soon. Falling in love is accidental, man. You see somebody you don't know and you love them. Before you know it, lady, you give your God-given precious body to this guy. You don't know. Falling in love is bad. Hey, folks in the camera, if you listen to me, falling in love is bad. Falling is a one-way flight. Done. Except gravity has changed. We start falling up now. But as far as I know, falling is down. But there is another word called growing, and that's up. You just can't see somebody. So I saw the girl, and I said, damn, she's fine. She nice, eh? And then I followed her. She ran away from me. She ran. But I knew I was going to catch her one of the days. And ladies and gentlemen, I caught her at the right time, at Christmas Eve. And ladies and gentlemen, we grew. We started, and we grew. I told her what my plans were. I told her, one day, girl, when the kids are... Did you hear that? Did you hear that? I just met a girl. When the kids are big and gone, don't worry, girl. We'll retire back home. We'll have a nice home, and we'll do what we love doing. She said, what is that? Making kids? I said, no, not really. I shared my vision with her, and we sat and we planned it out. And today, we are back in our homeland, doing what we love. Ladies and gentlemen, last Tuesday, we celebrated 41 years as a married couple. Would you please stand, baby girl? I know you're going to be scared. Would my one and only love of my life stand? And you're lucky I come and kiss you right away. All right, all right. What am I saying to you as I close? There is intentional families, and all the 10 categories I gave you could fall within that too. Because you could even have a nuclear family with father and mother, but it was not intentional, right? What we need to do is to help people. As I close, as you heard my bio, Dr. Chaitan runs an international campaign against crime and violence called Project Stop and Think. And so I cannot sit down without leaving my mantra with you. Even when your heart is racing and your eye is watering and you seem to see what you like, what you see may not be what it is. So stop and think before you proceed. God bless you, everybody.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Chaitan. And I could listen to him all day, right? But we do not have all day. We have a time that we need to keep. But this is not an academic conversation. We know that, right? The practicality of this is that there are people all across this nation who have been impacted one way or the other by what happens in the family. And it's in every institution, prison, Mungay Hospital. If you look at the statistics of the men who are really suffering, they've come from broken families. And what we've seen most times is absence of dads. So this is not an academic conversation. All of us, in one way or the other, need to be part of this solution to what Grenada is facing right now. All right, so let's take a very sober, conscious, God-inspired look at what's happening and really begin to address this at the national level. And I'm thanking the ministers who are here and so on, because this is a national issue that we all are called to address. So at this point, I'm going to ask Sister Hilary Alexander to just give a thank you, and then we're going to have a break, and we're going to enter into our formal conversations.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am both honored and privileged to say thank you to all persons who have contributed to this wonderful start of this very significant consultation on the Grenadan family. Some of you may have to leave, and I just don't want to miss the opportunity of saying thank you. First, I wish to thank all the honorable government ministers who have graced us with their presence in spite of busy schedules. Special thanks goes to Honorable Delma Thomas, Religious Affairs, Youth and Sports, and her ministry staff for your unstinting, generous support and active participation in making this event what it is. We are deeply grateful. Thank you to the minister for your kind words of encouragement. How can I say thank you to all our esteemed featured speaker who had ably and eloquently set the pace for the rest of the day with your information address and challenging words. Thank you, Dr. Chaitan. Thank you, Pastor Jude Hector, for your ready willingness to support us and to ably chair the opening ceremony. Thank you to all the members of our celebrating organization. Sister Liz, for opening prayer, and Sister Joan for boldly articulating our vision. We thank all of you who have accepted our invitation to represent us, to represent the church, civil society, student, government official, and the media. Without you, there will be no family consultation. We are deeply grateful. We look forward to a fruitful day as we dialogue together. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wonderful. So we've been sitting for a while, so we're going to have a break for about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and have our first panel discussion. Thank you very much.
37 years, a seasoned development worker, a native of Grenada, and he's traveled internationally. He's currently the director of Legal Aid Counseling Clinic, and he's done an enormous amount of work. He's a gender advocate and have done work with the UN Women Masculinities Advisory Group. He's a past president of the Caribbean Male Action Network, CARIMAN, and a former board member of Men Engage Global Alliance, MEGA. He's trained extensively, regionally and internationally, and he's well suited to be our moderator this morning. He will now take over from here. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Sister Joan. On behalf of my team at Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, I want to thank the organizers of this consultation for inviting our presence and for inviting me to lead this, what I hope will be a very interesting conversation with two esteemed panelists up here whom I'm about to introduce. So to my left is Lady Avril Anand Trotman Joseph. She's a lawyer who has been practicing since 1987. She is a founding partner of a family firm, Chapman and Trotman of Guyana. She is a former Solicitor General of Grenada, and she is a managing partner of Joseph & Joseph, a law firm in Grenada. She is a graduate of the University of the West Indies who received postgraduate certification from the Hugh Wooding Law School, Council of Legal Education Certificate, the University of London, where she received a Master's of Laws and postgraduate specialist training at the University of Gainesville in Florida, USA. She is also a postgraduate fellow of the University of Defense, Washington. She is a UNICEF Child Rights and Gender Training, Child Rights Advocate and Trainer in Child Rights moving forward from the University of Oxford. Mrs. Trotman Joseph, or Lady Trotman Joseph, is the current chairperson of the Commonwealth Caribbean Association of Integrity Commissions and Anti-Corruption Bodies. She is the chairperson of Grenada's Customs Appeal Commission, the principal legal representative of the GTM Insurance Group, the immediate past president of and board member of CIWIL, which is Caribbean Women in Leadership. She is a trustee of the Caribbean Family Planning Association and public relations officer of Grenada National Organization of Women. Lady Joseph has served widely and ably, locally, regionally, and internationally. She is the author of several publications in the area of law, children's rights, juvenile justice, gender and politics, among others. She is widely known and highly esteemed throughout the Caribbean and Commonwealth and has played an important role in the UN Women through the Spotlight Initiative in 2020 to 2022. We are honored, ladies and gentlemen, to have among us an esteemed and outstanding Caribbean woman and leader. Thank you, Lady Joseph, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I was wondering who you were speaking about, but here I am. It really is a pleasure to be with all of you today. And, you know, I can come up with lots of excuses why I am too busy to be here, but this particular area reminds me that a lot of who I have become, not only nationally but globally, comes because of my work that I have done. The most authentic work that I have done in my life is advocating and doing public legal education, in particular, around the areas of women. Took me to children's rights as well, and eventually, besides all of the law, rule of law, and democracy, and all of those high-sounding things that I spend a lot of my time with, I realized that the integrity of speaking and relating to authentic people like you and having a sharing of your experiences, meeting with my experiences, and my womanhood and all that I am as a Caribbean woman really is what I take further afield. So I am sharing all of that to say this morning that whoever you are, whether it's in a church, whether it is in a school, whether it's just in a home, whether it's an organization, one like which I belong to here in Grenada, such as the Grenada National Coalition on the Rights of the Child. And I say that first because Reverend James and our own moderator here, we come from that particular organization. And it really has inspired us to keep on giving and keep on being. I'm also associated with the Grenada National Organization for Women. And I must share before I do that I spent some time, 5 years actually, being chairperson of Grenada National Coalition on the Rights of the Child. And I've also been doing a lot of work, and I do have colleagues here, Elaine and Sister Elaine and Sister Hillary, who also, we try to keep the advocacy flag flying around the rights of women, the women and the girls of Grenada. So I have been asked this morning to speak to you about the status of women and children and the role of social legislation. So based on my lived experiences, especially with the Grenada National Coalition on the Rights of the Child and the Grenada National Organization for Women, and yes, there are other organizations I'm involved in, such as the Grenada Bar Association, but my work in these two particular organizations here in Grenada caused me to decide to not just be a lawyer, but to go and do postgraduate studies in the area of rights. So I took off and went with the University of London to understand a little bit more about how the UN system works, how at that time what was the cutting edge about the rights of the child, the rights of the juvenile, especially those in conflict with the law, and about women. So yes, I wanted to be able to be better able to speak about the status of women and children and what it means for us, especially here in Grenada where I live and work. But based on my experience, yes, it's legal, but it's also very, very social. It's very real. And we have a lot of us here this morning, many of you, Sister Anne, many of you I've worked with in the vineyards and laboring in these particular areas of, especially of advocacy. And I remember marching with Sister Anne down the streets of St. George's as we were chanting to advocate for the rights of children. And I say all of this because I can share with you from now till the end of the day about the laws. I can tell you that there is CEDAW, which is the Convention for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And this creates the ideal laws to guide what we take and adapt here in Grenada about the rights of women. I can speak to you all day about the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which helps us to create the ideal status of children in the world's societies. And Grenada has actually signed on to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Grenada became a party to the International Covenant of Economic, Cultural, and Social Rights in 1991. Grenada became a party to the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights in 1991. We signed on to the CEDAW that I just mentioned in 1981, and its optional protocol, meaning, you know, as the laws, international laws evolve, we are signing on, and it is a legally binding legal instrument that defines discrimination against women. And it also tells our state of Grenada, because we have signed on to be bound by this particular convention or international law that Grenada must or should protect and maintain women's human rights and end all forms of, and I will repeat this word more than once, discrimination against them. So there is that. Then, of course, we signed on to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and that came into force here in 1990. And Grenada, the state of Grenada, irrespective of which government, irrespective of whether we are young, whether we're old, whether we're gone, it means that we are committed as a people, as a state, to recognize and uphold children's basic human rights and protections without, and this buzzword again, discrimination, including with respect to abuse, protection from all forms of violence by parents, guardians, caretakers, sexual exploitation, trafficking, and so on. And the list goes on and on and on. We keep signing on. We have signed on to another international declaration and several international platforms, which we call soft law. And we have signed on to the Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and the Beijing Platform for Action in 1995, the UN Millennium Development Goals, the Commonwealth Plan of Action, the Declaration of San Salvador, the Belém de Paro. So I think you're getting the picture. We have been signing on and embracing and adopting laws. So why then is every time we hear the criminal assizes sitting, that there are so many cases being called over and over and over again about violence against, especially, predominantly, women and children? And when I say children, I'm not just talking about the girl child. I'm talking about the boy child. Because in the course of my work at sessions just like this, we commit to protecting children, and because mainly we have had a lot of incidences of sexual interference, exploitation, and abuse against the girl child, the boy child has been falling by the wayside. And what do I mean by that? It means that they are pedophiles or pedophiles, however we want to call them. And for them, they have no preference as to who they exploit sexually, be it girl or boy. And that was something I didn't know before I started out on my journey about children and their rights and advocating for them through the GNCRC. And at one of these sessions like this, some years ago, I discovered that based on self-reporting, because we've spent so much time protecting the girl child, and now, of course, advocating for women and females, that there seem to be perhaps equally, or if not more so, sexual abuse and violence against the male, the boy child. And I'm putting that out there for us to understand that when I am talking about social legislation, it's human rights based. And when we talk about the status of women and children, it's because we're talking about the human rights. And what do I mean by that? It means the equal rights of women, yes, women, because for many, many centuries, women have not been equal in societies. Yet, we have a lot of pastors and reverends here, and they will tell you that the very first book of the Bible says, male and female, he created them. So, yes, we're equal. We were equal from the beginning. However we came, whether it's from the side, and the Bible never said that woman came from under the foot of man. Side by side. That is the kind of equality. And when we are doing all of this work, having these discussions, it's because we are talking about equal rights and equal opportunities for women with men. And there is an illusion sometimes. For example, you may say we have the first Governor General, female Governor General, but how many men served as Governor General before we got the first female Governor General? And yes, we have among us female ministers, a female president of the Senate, but how many male ministers of government and male presidents of the Senate were there before we started to get these first females? So it is an illusion when we're talking about the status of women, that it is an illusion that there is equality. And in addition to equality, when we're talking about the status and social legislation, we are also talking about equity. So in other words, yes, you have a right to be equal, but how are you going to get to the point where you have true equality, which means equity? And one good example of how do you get to equity in a society is that you may have somebody this high here, and then I may have this young man here who's on his phone there. And how do I get the short child to be as tall as him? What we do, we may have to get a box, and the box is the law. The law is what enables the short person, the child, to be equally respected for their rights to be heard, for their right to express how they're feeling. You put them on a box which is like, it's like a box, but it is the law. And that is what we're talking about. So, we've heard about discrimination, we've heard about violence, and Grenada is very good at social legislation. I'm checking on my time. I have some left. I heard because I have to be speaking about all of these laws, I have a little extra time. So, and I have to get some questions. But I think you get the idea that we have laws and laws and laws, and we are, in black and white, we have the status of women and children being recognized due to our advocacy around social legislation. So I will pause here because I'm not the only person sharing with you this morning, and I believe the moderator is saying questions. Here I am.
Yes, thank you, Lady Anand. And as I think from where I sit as the Director of Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic of the social challenges that women and girls are facing, women and children, given all of the legislation that we've passed, we've been excellent at signing things. In fact, yesterday we had a launch of a celebration to mark the 35th anniversary of Grenada's ratifying of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the establishment of the Coalition on the Rights of the Child from 1993. Would you say, just from where you sit, and it's probably going to be a bit subjective, but I'm going to ask you, given all this legislation and all of the changes that we've seen, are Grenadian women and children sort of better today in terms of the protections offered to them by legislation?
The simple answer is yes. And I say yes because we are now conscious in a way that we were not, that is, women and children would not have been exposed to knowledge and this kind of open discussion, let's say even 25 years ago. And that is why I say yes. So I've spoken a bit, so I will keep this answer short and sweet and say yes. We've come a long way, but not far enough.
So that will be my second question. What do we need to do more of? What do we need to continue to do? And what have we not done yet as a society that will really make that pivotal shift that we need to see in terms of some of our statistics? We know that Grenadian women, about 1 in 3 Grenadian women are victims of gender-based violence. We know that the Caribbean is amongst the regions of the world with the highest incidence of sexual violence against children. And unfortunately, Grenada is included in those numbers. So is there anything that we have not done yet, or we've started but we have not gone as far as we need to? And if so, can you share what that might be?
Okay, so I will try to keep this conversational and not so much legalese, because we're having a conversation. So I applaud the organizers for having a national conversation, and there are many like these, but because of the nature of the problems that you're talking about and dealing with every day, something tells us that the law is not enough. There are not enough of us out there working. And I'm a strong believer in continuous advocacy and education around these issues. I'm a strong believer in intergenerational communications. And sometimes I have conversations in spaces like these that are not comfortable to me and how I may have been socialized. And are there any Christians here? If there are Christians, can you raise your hands? Thank you. Are there any ostrich Christians here? Meaning, are you burying your heads in the sand? Are there any ostrich Christians? Because if they are this morning, we have to raise them up, because we are talking about some raw emotional issues. And I heard Mr. Chaitan sharing about when he saw his dear wife, who's also there, and he remembers seeing the bumps and the curves. Yes, he's honest. And that is what we need to be if we're going to have conversations like this that will bring about change. We have to be honest. And I am here in this room with a sister of mine, Ann Graves, and I shared that we marched earlier. And I remember that we heard about this school child that was pregnant. And our first instinct at GNCRC was, which big man did this to her? These sugar daddies. Yes, that's a reality. But when we got to the bottom of it, you would never believe where this school girl met the father of this child. Church. In church. She was a churchgoer. He was a churchgoer. She was a school girl. He was a school boy. So while we were ranting and raving, we discovered that, wait a minute, there's child sex going on. Where? In church. So we have to be honest. That is why I'm saying, if we want to bring about behavioral change, because you have all the hormones flying at certain ages. We have children who are born to children, knowing that they have young parents, and it's learned behavior. We have children who see adults in their society interfering, molesting, impregnating others, and what you think they're doing? They're taking all of this in. So we have to, in a very hypersexualized society, be honest. And when we're honest, we will get the right narratives for our young people in particular. Because in my work, I believe in a life cycle approach to this. You can't wait for persons to get big, the children to become 15 and 16 and then start to have the conversations. We have to start having these conversations right at the level, 2 years, 3 years. We know the Ministry of Social Development. They will tell you that's when they start working with children and tactile, even before, to make sure they can touch, feel, and grow. So you have to be saying good touch, bad touch, what is right, what is wrong, right from the beginning. And then you have to maintain the narrative, expanding for the age of the child, and reminding finally the adults that you know what is right and wrong, because our system taught you from when you were a child. And if now you don't want to follow what is wrong and just behave in a very debased, indisciplined way, well, then you will bang up in the court system pretty soon.
All right, thank you. I want to zero in on the issue of the law as it treats with these issues of, violence and abuse against women and children. I think we have good legislation, generally speaking. But is there more that we need to do at the level of the judiciary in terms of prosecuting persons and punishment? Because often I find, while we have good laws, if laws are not enforced, it's like you don't have them. There's no point in being on the books if there's no enforcement of them, or if there's not effective enforcement of them. So whereas somebody who rapes a child or molests a child and should be based on 3 convictions that for which he could get 15 years each, he gets 5 years each, so he comes away convicted of 3 acts of sexual offenses against a child and gets 15 years instead of 45, and now he's back on the street. Is that an incentive for persons to continue to commit offenses, or should the judiciary be doing more to ensure that perpetrators are treated harshly enough that is a deterrent to them and to others in the society to stay away from these offenses?
That's one part of it, but how do we rehabilitate these folks? It tells us that's not all about the law. We have to look at those of us, the pastors, the reverends, the counselors. That's where I believe we need to look in going forward.
All right, thank you, Lady, and I'll give you a few minutes to finish your presentation, and then we can go. Okay, right. So, ladies and gents, I would invite you later if you have questions for either of the panelists, but at this point, I'm going to invite Father Mark, so let me quickly introduce him officially to you. Father Edward Roland Richard Mark, plenty names. Father Mark is currently serving as the Acting Health Service Administrator and Social Worker 1 at the Monge Psychiatric Hospital. Additionally, he has been the priest in charge of St. David and St. Paul Anglican Church for the past 18 years. Father Mark's career in education spans several decades. He began as a teacher at the St. Andrew's Anglican Primary School, where he worked for 25 years. And he also served as the principal for 17 of those years, contributing significantly to the development of the institution. So this nice-looking young man here is not nearly as innocent as his face might suggest, right? Father Mark holds a Master of Science in Counseling Psychology from the University of the Southern Caribbean, a Diploma in Pastoral Studies from Codrington Theological College in Barbados, and a Licentiate in Theology from the University of the West Indies. Father Mark's qualifications and experiences as priest, principal, and counselor have afforded him the expertise to provide guidance and counseling to all and sundry. He's very much in touch with the community and continues to transform lives. His ministry is all about people. He's married and he has 1 daughter. Father Mark is going to speak about the status of men and youth in Grenada. I will give him a few minutes to start to make some remarks to you. And then, as with Lady Anand, I will ask him some questions. And then I'll try to reserve 5 minutes to the end and invite a couple of questions from the audience. So, Father Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning.
Good morning.
Much better, thank you. So I just want to embrace the opportunity to thank the organizers for this forum, and I trust by God's grace we all would work together to ensure that we heighten our standards and, of course, we seek true spiritual guidance moving forward here in this land. Now, it is a blessing to be gathered under this important theme, healing families and redeeming sexuality. And today, a most important aspect is that of the status of men and youth. We talk about healing families. It's important for us to start by examining the condition of our men, our young men, and of course our youth in its entirety. Our men would make up the backbone and the future of our homes, churches, and communities. Because when men are broken, families fracture. But when men are healed, families are made whole. Let us reflect today on where men and youth stand and the challenges they face and how we can redeem their identity and purpose by God's grace. It is clear that the reality that we face, if healing is not sorted, then it will be chaotic. So first, before healing can happen, we must face the truth. And the truth is that many of our men and youth, young men, are struggling silently. They carry the weight of expectations, but have no way safe to lay down. They are told to be strong, but not taught how to be honest about their pain. You're a man. You're not supposed to cry. You're a man. Stop behaving as a sissy, for example. But our men work very hard to provide, and sometimes often feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated in some situations. Not all. Many of them grew up without fathers or strong mentors. They were never shown how to express emotion, how to handle failure, or how to love without fear. So they learn to wear masks. And that mask is smiling on the outside, but wounded deeply on the inside. And our young men, they are growing up in a confusing world. A world that sells them images of strength without character, pleasure without commitment, and freedom without responsibility. The voices that should guide them, which is the voices of fathers, teachers, elders, are sometimes too often silent. So they turn to social media, their peers, and culture to tell them who they are, and those voices rarely speak to life in its entirety. We are raising boys, and by extension, young people in a generation that has forgotten how to raise men. And because of that, our homes are suffering, not from the lack of money or education in some circumstances, but the lack of healed manhood. Sexuality is marketed, distorted, and disconnected from God's design. The internet has become their teacher about manhood and sex. Many lack strong male role models. Men can guide them with wisdom, compassion, and truth. But the good news is this, that where there is brokenness, there can also be restoration. I repeat, where there is brokenness, there can also be restoration. And that is what we are here to talk about today. This is not just a social issue, but it's a spiritual battle. The enemy knows that if he can destroy our men, he can destroy families. From the beginning, God created men to lead with love, to protect with humility, and to serve with strength. But sin distorted that image, turning leadership into control, strength into silence, and sexuality into shame. Men are meant to be our guardians of life, but many have become prisoners of guilt and confusion. And our youth, instead of inheriting vision, they are inheriting wounds. But the good news is this: God is still in the business of restoring men. He's calling fathers back to their families, husbands back to their wives, and sons back to their God-given purpose as they continue to develop, as they continue to be prepared to take adult responsibilities within our nation and communities. The same God my dear colleagues, healed Peter's shame. The same God healed Paul's past, so that the same God can heal our hearts today, our men and our youth. Colleagues, as we face today, this situation is not, as I said earlier, is not just a social problem, and it's both spiritual and emotional. From the very beginning, men were created with purpose, as I said earlier on. And the original design was simply love, humility, compassion. But somewhere along the way, the design got distorted. And therefore, we are in these situations. As a result, men walk around carrying that invisible wounds, not because they are evil or careless, but because they are broken and hurting inside. Our young men are watching this, and they are inheriting those unhealed wounds. So our young men, and by extension our young people, they see silence, they see anger, they see confusion, and they begin to repeat it. They begin to model it. But we are not able to change the past, but we can face it. We are not able to erase the pain, but we can redeem it. When men begin to heal emotionally, spiritually, and relationally, there is a domino effect now that reaches into our families, our children, and our communities. A healed man becomes a safe man. A healed father becomes a present father. And when men begin to heal, families begin to heal with them. Redeeming sexuality. As we are going through this process of bringing healing to families, we must also talk about that many avoid sexuality. Sexuality is much more than physical attraction, as we all know, or sexual activity. It is a core part of who we are as human beings, the way we express love, intimacy, identity, and connection. So sexuality includes our identity, our relationships, our values and beliefs, our behavior. So sexuality is not just about the body. It also involves the mind, emotion, and spirit. It shapes how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we can live in harmony with our own values. When sexuality is healthy and redeemed, it brings connection, respect, and love. When it is distorted or wounded, it can lead to confusion, guilt, and brokenness. The role of the church and the community: we need continued mentorship programs where older men pour wisdom into young ones, support groups, family ministries. I said we need more. It exists. We must stop leaving men to suffer in silence. Encourage men to pray, cry together, rebuild together, because a healed man becomes a healing father. A godly youth becomes a leader in his generation. So the way forward, where do we go from here? Well, how to begin this journey of healing for our men, our youth, our families? It starts with one simple, powerful word: honesty. We cannot heal if we refuse to face the realities. We cannot fix what we keep hidden. Healing begins the moment we choose to say, I need help. So we have to swallow our pride as men, as youth, right? With able assistance from our mentors around us in order to chart the way forward. Men must be willing to take off the mask and admit we are tired when we're struggling. We have made mistakes. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. Because pretending to be okay keeps us trapped, but honesty sets us free. Colleagues, it is therefore imperative that we face the realities of our brokenness, our confusion. We face the realities whereby we can say, let's begin the process of healing together. Let forgiveness begin with you and I. Let strength, real humility, and godly strength pilot us through. Let us be a declaration. No more silence, no more shame, no more brokenness. Passed from one generation to the next. Let us be the generation of healed men, restored fathers, and redeemed families. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Father Mark. I have a couple of questions for you as well. For many years we've heard it in Calypso, we've seen it written over and over again, men are in crisis. And we've heard the question in song, where the young men gone? As if to suggest that suddenly our society is completely devoid of men, or maybe good men or men of good character, whatever it will be the categorization. But from where you sit as a shepherd in terms of your leadership of the church, so on, does that really hold true in 2025, that there are men are in crisis, that the men are not standing up and facing the responsibilities that they should? And if so, apart from what you've already shared, what do you think is contributing to that?
Well, I don't subscribe fully that men are in crisis, because those who continue to chart the way, those who continue to be role models, yes, they're making an impression. But at some point, we see some of our men in crisis. Now, for me, from my experience, my short years on the earth, the genesis of it is our mothers. Our mothers, some of them. Our daughters were cultured to wash, cook, mop, clean out, even wash their siblings who are brothers, their clothes, while our boys pitch marble, hold crayfish, play cricket in the basin in the river. Our daughters, 4 o'clock is the curfew to come in. 1 minute after 4, you get a good cocktail. The young men, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and it is okay. But hear this. When some of our young men say, Mom, I met Mary, and you know we're going out for 3 years, we're looking to get engaged. Yeah, Mom give their blessing. You sure what you're doing, son? Fine. Another 2 years, you get married. Fine. You seek counseling, go through the process. You get married now. The son complains to the mother, well, she ain't cooking properly. Right? He eats by his mother. And what some of our mothers do, you see how the boy gets small, that Jay-Z barely married there. Right? That's a reality, and as a counselor, I could tell you that. But the point I am making is that we did not teach our sons to cook, to wash, to iron, to clean out. So in the mind of some of our young men, they marry a slave. So as soon as they walk in, shoes, socks, belt, pants, shirt, and the slave have to go and scoop up. You have a meal, you leave it right there. You don't assist to wash the dishes. It may sound trivial, but these are the simple things, yes, that creates the situation in some cases. The issue of, again, fathers being financiers. Yes, you go to the court, you have a child, fine, right? But in some situations, a father is loved or is given love by the amount he can contribute. So if he can't, he's the worst man on earth. No, I am not saying that they are not genesis to the issues in a relationship. But these are the situations, right? You see a young man with his newborn walking, only one man, what he playing? You know, some of us don't emulate him. Some people hold up and say, boy, keep it up. But somebody go past. Since when? You sure that is yours? You know, I tell you. So when they get up in the morning and they walk in the popo chungs, as we would say, right? Some of us do not give them that encouragement and appreciation, we still break them. You know, somebody will pass, hey, Bob, you sure that one is yours? Come on. But we'll call the radio station. This man and them bad too much. They have nothing. So the fact remains that there are some situations, and it continues to fester, where our men are finding themselves deeper in situations where, in terms of the social lives and also with the law. So yes, there are some sections of our male population, I would say, there is a level of crisis there. But we have some of our men, in all that we do, there are good things and there are not so good things, right? But I believe that those men who are making an effort, those, like Lady Anande, I'm sure she mentored a lot of young men, not only just young girls, but young men. And through her initiative, yes, we see the changes. They come to us as priests, as pastors. They come to you as co-workers, right? All of us, we have one maternal mother. But when we succeed in life, we say, you see, this woman there, they are my mothers. This is what they contributed to my upbringing. Yes? And I think sometimes the way men are cultured, you see this disrespect? We devalue our female folk in some situations. Well, that's your day for. No, sir. Right? And there, the issues of court matters now because you want to raise your hand. But you're beating your chest. I is the man here. The man must be mature. The man must be spirit-filled. And first of all, the man, his first mode of business, husbands, is not to put the check on the table. Is not to bring the 20-pound cylinder, but is to call your family to pray. Amen. So when we call our families to pray, God blesses the finances. Yes, he blesses the opportunity to attain a piece of land, as we say, to build our own four posts. He gives us the opportunity to provide for our children, and at the same time to even help humanity. Because remember, we were not born with that golden spoon. We had to struggle, patience, tenacity, and of course, the will to succeed.
Thank you very much. Very, very well said. Thanks. And I am mindful of time. We started later than the schedule initially indicated. So I'm trying to work within a period of time that is less than what's on the schedule for us. So I'm going to go back to Lady Anand to ask if you can wrap up your thoughts in terms of the legislation and so on. And then we're going to invite a couple of questions from the floor and then wrap up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I heard one word in particular resonating between myself and my co-panelists, and that is honesty. And it's really, you know, when they say the spirit moves, that is what it is. And yes, I'm a woman and I can bring my perspectives to it. I'm a parent and I can bring my perspectives to it. And we've heard about the man and what they feel and what they experience and what are the pressures. So I think this beginning of our discussion this morning will really set the tone for us to collectively come up with some sustainable solutions. But before you get to solutions, you have to have you have to have the honesty, and you have to have interventions, and you have to support. So in Grenada, the reality is that we are mainly a matrifocal society. That's what the books tell us. That's what the background to the laws tell us. Meaning that we are largely single-headed, single-parent-headed households, and mainly by women. And at one point, I have my sister Elaine here. I don't know if the statistics have changed, but Grenada was very, very high in terms of ranking as one of the highest incidences of this phenomena. And therefore, we will then have practical difficulties in our society. The other thing we have to realize, law or no law, is that when the baby arrives, male or female, it does not come with a manual. So how is it, even within the meaning of the law, how are we say the state, but who is the state? All of these new international laws are telling us that although the state has responsibilities, so of course do the parents, so of course do the men and the women, and now more recently, civil society must play a part. This is becoming a part of what international law is about. So I want us to think about. So as we discuss, we need to discuss how we can support parents in a way that Father would have shared. We have our good priest, and what is so important, he is really a resource for us today, because he's not just getting up into the pulpit and preaching. He's doing so much more in terms of dealing with the realities of our society. Communications. If you can communicate well within the home, within the family, within the society, you wouldn't end up before the courts. Sometimes we communicate with anger, and we heard that from my co-panelists. We're communicating with licks and blows. And once you do that, the outcome will not be a good one, because violence is learned behavior. And in working in the area of domestic violence and women's rights and protections, we have heard from the men that sometimes their mothers beat them so badly that when they get a chance and they get a wife or a partner, they take it out on them, because of course now they are man. So I want us, whether we are women or whether we are men here today, to remember that violence is definitely not the answer. I want to go, because we're talking law, about our legislation. And as we talk, for example, we are discussing nationally the Civil Responsibility Act. I am suggesting that these laws should be in simple language, because it has to do about our society. And this is about social status, social legislation. And it should also be gender neutral. So when anybody comes from the ministry and gives you a bill, you look to say, can the 7-year-old child in need of protection understand what this law intended to protect them is saying? These are the kinds of questions you have to answer when you're doing social legislation. Is the language of the bill that you're asked to review speaking to you respectfully as male or female? So for example, I'm a woman, but I don't want to be told that I am he or him. I want to see language that reflects me and my life there as well. And because we're talking laws, there's law reform, and as I said before, there's lots of discussions on the Civil Responsibility Act. I have my own views. I think that yes, it's needed. However, and we do have somebody from our Family Planning Association here who will be sharing more with us today. We need to, just as how we're being honest here today and encouraging each other to be honest about what is really happening in our society. And that is why I started about the story about the schoolboy and the schoolgirl. However, we have to make sure that these laws are correctly placed. This is my view, my respectful view, where there is also consideration for the expertise of child protection and counseling to be applied. Mandatory reporting is also very important when we see children in particular being discriminated or abused. Health and family life education. We come back to church. Church is a big thing in Grenada. Church schools is as big as a big thing in Grenada. How many of us would have gone to church schools here? Almost everybody. So there are church boards and so on. So why are the children coming out of these church schools getting into so much trouble? When there is under curricula, health and family life education. So you notice I'm a lawyer, but because of the work I've done and I'm doing, I talk less about the law and more about the reality, the honesty of what we have to be doing. So I did address a teachers' conference, a national teachers' conference, and I learned that the teachers themselves are not comfortable with teaching in this area. Why? They told me Many of them had been abused themselves as children, and they were not, therefore, comfortable talking about sexuality. What does it mean? We have to have, and we have Reverend here, we have Reverend there, we have pastors. We have to have a culture of healing. Talking about healed families. So pastors, reverends, when you stand up on your pulpits this weekend, think, I'm asking you, off the cuff, how is your sermon, your words, helping to heal and encourage the broken, the beaten, the abused? Because there are more of them in your congregation than sometimes would want to admit it. So your healing, you have to empower, you have to key in on their resilience and tell them it's okay. It's okay to be broken. It's okay not to be a perfect mother, not a perfect father. It's okay that things will happen to your children, to you. But encourage resilience, overcoming determination. So all in all, we have to address our culture, the kind of music we listen to. We have to guard our minds. We have to guard what we're watching. You know, I like to watch Young and the Restless, but until I sat with my granddaughter to watch Young and the Restless, you know, certain things I became desensitized, and suddenly no, this is not suitable. So I now hardly watch that because I cannot honestly expose a child to some of what is there. It's like soft porn in the daylight. So these are the kinds of ways of thinking, a culture of prevention in every aspect of our life. Yes, we may want maximum penalties of the law. However, in addition to that, we have to encourage, all of us, a culture of reporting, policing, good health care and health services, counseling and support. This is where I'm leaning very heavily into, and rehabilitating our offenders. We are hearing sometimes that especially sexual predators cannot be rehabilitated. So no matter how many years you give them, when they come out, they go right back. Is that true? I am not the expert there. But we have trained counselors and psychiatrists and so on who can perhaps, through God, through divine intervention, break some of these cycles. All of us here, we have to continue these discussions as to how we can utilize the law, apply the law, intervene, but together we must have a culture of prevention of some of the ills of our society through our churches, our pulpits, in our homes, in our schools, in every aspects of our lives. We don't just want to be only honest. We want to have long-term and sustainable solutions to the problems that we are discussing today. So I'm throwing it out to us. Let us come up with some strong recommendations for solutions, having been honest that we have serious problems in our society.
Right, thank you very much, Lady Anand. So we have to wrap up. Unfortunately, I had offered the opportunity for a couple of questions, but there is another panel that needs to happen before the lunch hours, which is already going to be pushed back. So I'm going to invite Father Mac to give us final thoughts in about 1 minute to a minute and a half.
No, that's okay. Colleagues, it is important that we focus on our men a bit more, and I invite all of us to continue to sow a good seed, right? Be mentors. Now, Lady Ananda said divine intervention this morning as it relates to honesty. Sister Clarice Charles, many moons ago, I'm not that old, when she visited the school, when I became a teacher, she said, I applaud your mode of dress. We need men, and from today, you are my son. And up to this blessed day, she kept her word. So I'm just saying, there are many mentors. You don't have to be men, but who can encourage and mentor our men, both youth and seniors, to become better persons in the community. I also want to express the issue of choices with young people. A young man wants to do home economics. What you doing that for? That's the old thing. But men are the better cooks. Men are the better chefs. Right? But I know we can have a debate on that. But the point is, yes, in our men, we have talents, we have gifts, and we must use this opportunity now, yes, to extract it from them in a positive way. Now there is hope, yes, and our language, our criticisms, we criticize but with love, we chastise with love. You're wrong, but hey, this is an avenue that we can all work together to bring about that changes. Yeah? And it is important that the examples that we show to our young people as it relates to not just men, but the society as a whole is important because it will dictate what kind of leader and leadership we have socially, spiritually, economically, politically as we move forward. Thank you.
Right, so it just remains to me then to thank the two I had the pleasure to moderate this conversation with, Lady Anna. Mark, you're not hearing? Oh, sorry, the mic is cutting off, and I think that's part of the reason why we have to stop now, because the technician has to do something with the microphone. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I encourage you to have conversations privately if you can during the lunch break, if the panelists are still here. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to say thanks to our first panelist and moderator, Mr. Buckmeyer. It was an indeed engaging, illuminating, and for me personally, healing conversation. And conversations that we don't readily have, but are so much needed, especially in these times, our social media children, social media families, that we need to have these kinds of discussions more frequently and even more openly. It is my pleasure to moderate this second panel discussion. And this panel discussion will feature Bishop Dr. Esther Baptiste, and she will be doing a talk on biblical sexuality. Please permit me to introduce you to Dr. Baptiste. I know she may not be a stranger to many of us, but to our online audience and those who is the first time seeing her. Bishop Baptiste is a woman of a mighty God. Her Excellency Ambassador Bishop Dr. Esther R. Baptiste, CGPA, wife and mother of 4 wonderful children, 1 boy, 3 girls. She's a past student, a head girl, and valedictorian of Happy Hill Secondary School, 1990 to 1993. Bishop is the overseer of the International Pentecostal Assembly of Grenada that has 5 churches. She is the first vice president of the Alliance of Evangelical Churches of Grenada. She is the 2nd vice president of the Caribbean Transformational International Network. She is the senior pastor of the House of Prayer Sanctuary in Mardi Gras. She is a 2nd-level chaplain, a community service chaplain to be exact. She is a former teacher with over 20 years of experience. She is the dean of the IPA Bible Institute in Grenada, now the IPA Ministry Training Center and online Bible school. She has a bachelor in theology with emphasis on Christian counseling from the Caribbean College of the Bible International, CCBI. She has a master's in theology with emphasis on Christian counseling from the same CCBI. She holds a Doctor of Divinity with honors from the Caribbean International Chaplaincy Association, Protocol and Diplomatic Training Awardee from the Word of Life Ministry, now the Caribbean International Chaplaincy Association. She's a commander of the Most Noble Order of Global Peace Ambassador. Let's welcome Bishop Esther Baptiste.
Thank you, thank you. The introduction is longer than the presentation. But good morning to everyone. I think it's still morning, right? To all of you distinguished men and women, champions for the cause of civil society and living life on purpose and allowing not just us as individuals to grow and strive, but all of us as a community to grow and strive. And I am taking this from the biblical perspective, an area that it is within my comfort zone, and I really applaud all the presenters that have gone before me, that I've been able to witness from Dr. Chaitan's down onto the good lawyer lady. And of course, there's an opportunity now to share on biblical sexuality. And I also want to applaud the initiative that is being done here today, and I think we need more of that. So I commend Dame Joan Purcell and her team for this very, very needed and necessary consultation on the family. And so taking this from a biblical perspective does not necessarily mean that we are incognizant of the fact that this is a social cycle, and that this is just one leg or one arm of the journey to increasing and improving on our families and on individual as a whole. In modern construct, we have tried to redefine our identity. We have sought to redefine our morality. We have also sought to redefine relationships. And so movies have glorified sexuality. Music promotes it, and the social media, of course, has run with it to allow it to empower us. But we know differently. But I want to zoom in on our sexuality from God's design. Because I believe that anything that we utilize in the earth realm has to come from a manufacturer, has to come from a designer, has to come from a source. And we cannot talk family or anything else human except we go to the designer and we go to the creator, God himself. And those of us in Grenada, we do not believe in evolution or any of these scientific theories that want to claim creation or human being or anything in the nature. We believe that there is a triune deity that is a three unity in diversity that we worship. So human sexuality starts from the foundation of our biblical understanding of what is God's design and blueprint. And so what I've seen, and I'm not just talking from the perspective of just what we teach in Christianity, but from my personal understanding of the scriptures outside of preconceived ideas, that I believe is a purity of the scriptures. And I've seen four things that are basic to all of human capacity, including our sexuality. And it's a beautiful design. It's a design like no other. There is no comparison in what God has given to us. He has given to us the best. And I am a champion for that. So in creation, in Genesis 1 and 2, taking it from the narrative of God's design in creation, we're seeing that human beings and as a matter of fact, God created everything in the geological sphere, and he said it was good. In the biological sphere, and it was good. And when it comes to humanity, it was a greater, higher order, right? And God created man out of the dust of the ground, humus or mud or earth, and created a beautiful design. So in the design of God for man, in Genesis 1:27, it says that God was as if conjuring up the idea, let us make man and let them rule, not over each other, but over the land space, which is the territorial space, over the aquatic space, which is the waters, and over the celestial space, right? Which is the sky. So the design of man, when it comes to our sexuality, everything in its design facilitates that. But I don't want to talk about the sexuality until I give you the big picture of why God created us a sexual being in the first place. So by design, we are to be image bearers. Now when God made the animals upon the earth, they were not image bearers. When God created the flowers and birds and all the different elements in the created form, they were not image bearers. So we have to understand that man, humanity, the man and the woman, which is the word for humankind, our modern terms, I think is Homo sapiens or something like that, they call it, just to distinguish it from animals, us from animals. But we are image bearers. God said, let us make them in our image and in our likeness. So the image bearer, God is a community. There are three persons in the divine Trinity. That's why God says, it was not good for the man to be alone. All right? The aloneness was not good. But the creation of the woman for the man builds that community in the earth realm. So in this image, the very design of man is in this image bearer, okay? And I'm going to come back just to show you the 4 points the 4 points that I'm stressing. So image bearing, rulership, covenant, which is the marriage, and the ratifying of that covenant. God has blessed man with intimacy and his own sexuality. So the design is fourfold. So if you read the narrative in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 up to the fall, you see that God created man, even his physiology is designed for that sexuality. The Bible said that God created male. So he was the originator, and I don't want to use the word gender, but for the original understanding, because it's different sex, because we know the word gender now has a broader connotation. But he is the originator of the sex, right? The Bible says he designed them male and a female. So there was only two. All right, so the alphabet people is on the attack right here. But only two genders. And by design, in terms of the physiology, the biology, the biological construct of the male and female, man, woman, God made them, first of all, male and female by virtue of the gametes, right? So we have the woman carries the egg, the ovum, and the male carries the sperm or the testes. So that is not the only distinguishing fact for male and female. All right, so we're talking about transgender and all the ideologies that we have embraced in the modern times. But by design, I've seen 3 scientific understanding that we are uniquely male and female only. So one is our gametes. Secondly, it's the chromosomes. Chromosomally, we are distinguished male and female. So I guess the female is XX and the male is XY. And that cannot be altered, changed. And then we have chromosomally, and then we have they're distinct by virtue of, well, of course, we know the physical construct, right? The external features, right? In terms of the physiology, in terms of the biological makeup. Men is a little bit more robust and masculine, and women is a little bit on the other side of it. But you have the hormones, you have the testes, right? And I think that there was a third one. I'll get it just now for you. It just slipped me momentarily. But the whole physiology of male and female is distinct not just by externals or by your penis and your vagina. Okay? So I'm talking sexuality. I'm going to use some terms. Okay? That's all right? So God has designed us that way. We got that by design. All right? And it is not an afterthought. Our very biology, right? And I think that, yeah, the other one was testosterone and estrogen, right? Our hormones, that was the third one. So hormonally, we are different. Okay, it's only when we reach to menopause and things start to get out of whack because they're decreasing in their value. But biologically, we are distinct, male and female, for those 3 reasons, okay? Male and female. It took a man, he created him out of the dust of the ground, and then he took a rib. We women, let me just shove that in there. We are made with a greater material. a higher material, okay? We're made with bones, ribs, okay? I said calcium, calcium. But the whole design of God is intentional. I heard Dr. Niels Chaitan use that word, intentionality. So everything in the design. So he created them physically with sexuality, with hormones and garments and physical features to facilitate their sexuality. All right, everybody agree with that? Okay, and then watch the construct. After God has created man, a physical being, he gives him a soul, breathes into him, and he becomes a soul, a living, breathing soul. For the purpose, the second order, for ruling. So not just he gives him a physical or physiology, he gives him intelligence, and he also gives him diversity, so that he's able to fulfill. There is a big picture here. The big picture is the assignment of God to rule the earth, to have dominion over the birds, the aquatic domain, the territorial domain, the celestial domains, and to replenish them and to have. So there is an assignment, there is a mission. Okay, and even when we talk about submission, you have to submit to that mission. Anyway, that's maybe going off at tangents there. But, so your sexuality is within the confines of your dominion. That's why when a man violates a woman, for example, there's a certain authority, there is a certain dominion that happens in that realm. Even when you look at the occultic world, when Satanists use sexual orgies or sexual experiences, whether with humans or with beasts or with demons, it is to a certain rulership and dominance. There is a dominance in sex. Even the hormones that are released when you reach your orgasm, or men say they come, all right? The sex hormones that are released is bonding hormones. Bonding hormones, right? Oxytocin, yes, that's the science of it. So that's why Jesus says, a man shall leave mother and father and cleave his wife. It is within that dominion that they too, and I heard the good lawyer says, that they are together, they are side by side, ruling from the beginning. And this is not a sexist thing. This is a biblical order. So that dominion, that rulership, watch the order, create the man, the woman, gives them authority to rule and to subdue and to replenish that dominion, that rulership. Then he gives them two other things to flow within that domain. He gives them covenant. And the covenant is marriage. So he says, the Lord brought the woman to the man, okay? And they were naked and unashamed. That's the first marriage, okay? There were no bridesmaid and all of that. But God blessed them, okay? Marriage is about fundamentally the blessings as you go forth in this new relationship. So God blessed them and give them marriage, right? The order is to multiply and replenish. It's a new kingdom, it's a new order. And then God gives them the intimacy or the permission to use that sexual identity to be able to build that covenant. Okay, Abraham was given a covenant. God said, I will bless you. I will make you a blessing. I will give you a great land. And then God ratified that covenant with circumcision. God gave Noah a rainbow and says, I will not destroy the earth again by fire. And by water. And ratify, somebody is with me. And ratified it with a rainbow. God gives us a authority to rule, gives us a covenant on that front and ratifies it with our intimacy. So that comes from a pure place. It comes from a place of your created dominion and God's order to fulfill that need. And then God woke up, as the Songs of Solomon say, do not awaken the thing until, all right? And God woke that up in them at the beginning for the greater intimacy with God. It's not a means in itself and an end in itself. It's to show. So every time Abraham performs circumcision, he is showing that there is a greater seed to come. So every time we involve in marital intimacy, it speaks of a greater intimacy with the Lord Jesus Christ, our Creator God. I don't know how much more time I have, but yeah. Am I good? A few more? Right. So the design is intentional. And so when God created us and wired us with this beautiful sexuality, right? As we say, somebody said it earlier on, that sex is one of the most glorious things. I think it's Dr. Chaitan. It is. And we have downplayed it in Christianity because we are being on the preventative mode. All right? Don't do it because outside of marriage is going to be. But one of the things I also want to say and inject here, if I don't have any other time to do so, it was the fall that changed everything. It was sin that changed the trajectory of God's design. Sex was given before sin. Right? So at all levels, God has given you diversity to enjoy it. Ooh, that's an ant and a spider or a lion or a bear, a dog, a cat cannot enjoy sex in multiplicity of ways. Okay? One thing, bam, 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 inject the sperm and then lay eggs or whatever, and that's it. It's not to say that we have gone above the diversities. So we have all kinds of sexual oriented. So from Genesis chapter 7, when it talks about, I think it's chapter 7, when it talks about the sons of man and the daughters of the earth came together, you know, that outside of the order right there. So everything from that line of sin. Sin is what has corrupted and throw everything out of tangent to what God has designed it to be. So now it becomes self-indulgence. Now it becomes weapons. Now it becomes a system of control. Now it becomes all kinds of things. So we have all kinds of sexual orientation. So we have same-sex relationship, homosexuality, we have lesbianism, we have transgenderism, we have all these kinds of sexual orientations that now becomes a distortion of God's original idea. So when we are involved in intimacy and sexual pleasure, we have to think about the greater reality of us enjoying the presence of God. God gave Adam and Eve his presence. You see that in chapter 2, chapter 3, I think, when God came down and Adam started to hide. So shame, trying to hide, and all of that came as a consequence of the sin. Control came as a consequence of the sin. Your desire should be to the man, he shall rule over you. They were not supposed to rule over each other. They were supposed to rule over the animals, over the geology, over the sphere. So our sexuality is wired. The hormones that are released cause a bonding. So Genesis says, for this cause shall a man leave father, mother, leave, cleave, which is that marriage relationship, and bond, which is your sexual bonding as you reach the height of your sexuality. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Batiste. I want to begin this section of question and answer with a poll to the audience. Dr. Batiste just laid out the biblical framework for sexuality. Now, most of us in here earlier had raised our hands when we were asked, are we Christians? The question to you is this: have you ever heard what Dr. Baptiste laid out before in any church function, framing, or context? If you have, raise your hands up. At older a few of not in such depth. Dr. Baptiste, my question then is, what prevents the church from teaching topics like these at this level or even deeper to our congregations, given the implications of such topics and discussions?
Yes, it's a good question. But I think what has happened over the years, and I say it this way, we have learned, I think in the context of when things were translated to us, I mean, before we didn't have books and whatever else, most of the things that were handed down were through stories, through experiences. So, for example, when somebody were to teach a principle, they wouldn't be translated by virtue of the principle, but by virtue of the example. So what we have done, we have used the examples as principle. I'll give an example. For example, we said a woman, when she's married, she has to make sure she take care of the husband and put the food on the table and do all the cutleries and what. That's how you treat a good man. That's how you be a good wife. Now, that was an example of being a good wife, but that was not the principle of being a good wife. So that became the teaching platform rather than what was really the idea of being a good wife, right? And so for centuries, for years, we've been teaching those things. I say, for you to correct that, it takes 2 or 3 generations to correct that, because it has been so. Even when we hear the truth now, we measure it against what we already know. We say, nah, we're throwing that out because that's not what we know, right? So I think in not, and I don't want to say it was deliberately, but I think in the transit of information over the years, we have made some errors in how we disclose it, because the best way to enjoy your sexual experience is within that framework. Anytime you go into the framework, you harm yourself. It's like, I say it this way, it's like giving a 2-year-old child a machine gun. All right? He will either destroy himself or somebody else.
Thank you. And final question. Lady Trotman introduced a phrase that had me wincing in the audience as a Christian teacher and someone who's written books on the Christian paradigm. She said, ostrich Christians. But to be honest, we have the image in the church of being hiding from issues, hiding from situations and circumstances, and not dealing with the reality as is. And sometimes some people say we hide behind the Bible. So how do we as a modern church clean up the image or redeem the image of the church such that society knows that they can come to us for assistance in dealing with the heavy matters and the issues that are plaguing our families?
And of course, it starts with truth, right? We have never examined what we have received. I come from a nuclear family, and I have watched families over the years. This is why I try to go for the truth, because I've seen like my mother, her mother, and families of that nature, and they serve their husbands. I mean, they cook, they wash, they iron, they starch, everything else to that effect. And they live maybe 70, 60, whatever, and they were really never fulfilled because their whole life they're serving this man. And our churches were dominated by male pastors, and they love to teach sexuality to encourage themselves and their own needs at home, right? It was not so much to teach the truth of Scripture, but I don't want to come down on our men now, but really to encourage their own sexual desires and fulfillment. But we have to go back to the truth. And when I looked at those marriages that we say were marriages, and I see some missing points, I said, no, we do not have it right. And we have to go back to the drawing board and teach the right thing. So people just come, they start from Ephesians, they start from Thessalonians, they start from everywhere else. But nobody starts from that perfect platform of what God's ideal was. And when we get back to that, because if we get to God's ideal, we will not have contention and war and fighting that we have in marriage that we have now. Because all of the things that we are doing and says these are the ideal are not helping us. They are really not building marriage the more. But if we go back to teaching these principles without preconceived ideas and bringing our own things into it, but teach the purity of the Word of God, it helps all of us to strive and grow. And church and the Christian community are the pilot for that. And we have to go back to stop telling young people, you know, pray for God to stifle your sexual desires. I used to pray for that, right? Because the self-control we lack in our society. But we have to, as the songs of Solomon say, we have to awaken it because we've been sleeping. But God wires us that way, and we have to be proud of our sexuality. Our sexual urges and desires were created within a design. And anything you use outside of a design, your washing machine, your fridge, you're going to have a short expanse of time to use it. So yes, go back to the order. Go back to God's original design, not what we want the Bible to say, but what the Bible is actually saying, so that we can liberate our young people who now are going out to these sexual desires, because that's what they're learning. The social media is saying it's good. You got to get, the virginity is no longer a desired thing. You have to get 3 or 4 partners and so on and so forth. So our sexuality has gone like on a rampage.
Thank you so much, Dr. Batiste. And we'll move right along to Dr. Tonya Frame. Dr. Tonya Frame is a public health professional with over 20 years of experience. She holds a PhD in international health and development with a specialization in reproductive health and a Master of Public Health in Health Education. Dr. Frame serves as an assistant professor at St. George's University and is president of the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association. She's a passionate advocate for sexual and reproductive health and rights, and has led the development of key national policies such as the Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Policy, the Health Sector Standard Operating Procedures, and responding to gender-based violence in Grenada and St. Vincent, and the Standards for Quality Adolescent Healthcare Service. Dr. Frame has also conducted training to strengthen health systems' capacity to respond to gender-based violence and adolescent health. I now invite Dr. Tonya Frame to deliberate on the topic sexual reproductive health. Dr. Frame.
Thank you and good afternoon now. To Ms. Joan Purcell, thank you so much for the invitation, and as everyone has said, for this fantastic initiative. I think it's really long overdue, and I'm excited not just for this session, but for what can come after. I've heard a lot of good and interesting things so far, and in my head I'm thinking, okay, how can I pull on some of these and tweak my presentation? But I really want to focus on, or at least really maybe start by presenting myself to you from the perspective of a wife and as a mother of small children. And I'm doing this deliberately. My children are 8 and 6. Because I think oftentimes when you hear people speak purely about sexual and reproductive health, it gets lost in translation, or it can get lost in translation behind a lot of noise, right? Where it sometimes comes across as, maybe the person is out of touch with reality, and they're living in this space where they're not confronted by the challenges of parenting children who have sexuality, even as small as 6 and 8, right? It's a very normal part of our humanness. God created us that way. So I want to present myself to you really as a wife and as a mother. And I think I have the benefit of seeing sexual and reproductive health and rights from that perspective. It's a fairly new perspective for me, but I think it holds some value that I think it's worth sharing. So I'm presenting today specifically the topic on sexual and reproductive health within the context of building healthy families. I think often we view sexual and reproductive health as separate and apart from healthy families, right? We view it as this nasty, dirty thing that is not meant to be enjoyed. We don't talk about sexual pleasure because it's taboo. Nobody wants to hear that, right? We hear a lot about the sexually transmitted infections. We hear about the HIVs. We hear about the unwanted pregnancy. But what is motivating us to have sex? It's not a bad word. It's normal, right? Where's our sexuality coming from? It's innate. And we have that urge, and we don't understand how to deal with it as young children from day one up until we die, right? And so when we talk about the ideal, we know, as someone who works in this space, as coming from the Planned Parenthood Association, we don't disagree that marriage can provide a safe space, and it's probably one of the best spaces for sex to occur, right? But what we accept is that the reality is that many people in our Grenadian context and globally are having sex outside of marriage. So I'm here to talk about the reality. I'm not talking about the fantasy and what is the ideal. We can strive to the ideal, but it means we first have to, as Lady Anande said, we have to be honest, right? So being honest that in our social space, our social reality, many people are having sex outside of marriage. Many people they don't know who their father is, right? My father used to say, well, you know who your mother is because she bears the burden. She's the one who carried the load for 9 months. That's what she used to say. But the father, there is always a question mark about the father, right? Or usually a question mark. And so we have many single-headed households, have divorce and all of that. So this is our reality. Adolescents, children engage in sexual activity. Many, not because they want to, even though it is part of their normal development and they are in some cases experimenting. We have all kinds of games. What we have? We have Jam Toti. What else we have? Right? We have Spin the Bottle. We have all kinds of games that we play where children and adolescents create the space, and it's not a new space they're creating, but they're experimenting with their sexuality, and they don't understand what it is, right? You miss them for a little while, they're off playing mommy and daddy somewhere, right? So we have these things happen. What we don't have, however, is a space for them to explore that in a healthy manner. And I think this is what the conversation, for me, this is what is important. Breaking the silence around sexual and reproductive health. 1, accepting that it is normal. 2, accepting that it happens in many different forms. 3, that it is pleasurable. before that it carries many risks. And so we have to therefore create a space where we can have healthy conversations, difficult but healthy conversations around sexuality, so that we can build healthy families. We're aware of the situations of incest with our families, right? That's because our families are healthy. It means that there is a problem, right? And when it happens, in many instances, the family doesn't want to deal with it. You don't want to make a report to the police. You don't want to go to healthcare services. You don't want to go to counseling because our society is small and you don't want to shame. You don't want to bring shame to your family, right? You don't want to bring shame to your family's name. Sometimes to the detriment of the person, the adult who has had to deal with this situation, right? This trauma, this thing that we heard this morning again from Lady Anande, that the teachers are saying, well, I can't teach about sexuality because I have not even confronted my own issues. We have to create the space within the family. We have to have open conversations about what our values are. I think we talk broadly about sex within marriage, and that is where it is supposed to happen. But do our children know that? Are we explicit with them in setting those ground rules to say, these are the expectations of you for your sexuality, right? My expectations for my children may not be the same as you for yours. But we cannot take it for granted. We have to be explicit, right? I've done research where young people have said to me, adolescents have said, you know, I want to have those conversations, but it's uncomfortable. My mother has never said to me explicitly, I think that is what the expectation is. But we've never had the conversation about when it's okay, a good time for me to have sex. When is a good time for me to have a boyfriend? When is a good time for me to start dating, right? Because sexuality is not always about sex. It's about intimacy. It's about, somebody said this morning about growing. I believe it was Dr. Chaitan, right? It's about growing. And this family has to create that space for healthy growth and development. It's the very first place. Before I send my children out to school, I want to ensure they have a strong foundation, right? Because I want to ensure as much as possible that they're incorruptible, right? But I have to be explicit with them. So when my children ask, okay, well, Mommy, where do babies come from? How did I get here? Right? I can't tell them that they came from the sky, by a plane, by a bird. It's unreasonable for me to tell them that. But for a lot of us, it's the easy answer. Because we are so shocked that we don't know what to do. Right? And in creating that space within the family, the conversations about sexuality, about sexual and reproductive health and rights, those have to become normal conversations. Start early, right? So let's start by naming things appropriately and correctly. We're talking about the body parts. Why can't we say the nose and the hand and the shoulders and the knees, but we can't say vagina? We can't say penis. What that results in, we hear things like cocoa and salt fish and, right, chocolate. Well, this is the first I'm hearing chocolate, right? All kinds of names we're hearing. And what it means that in real terms is that when our children are violated, they don't know that they're violated, or they're trying to express to you that they're violated as parents. And they can't, you can't understand them. They're seeking help, and the provider can't understand what they're saying because they're speaking a different language, right? So let's create a space within the family where we speak the same language by naming things correctly. It's penis and vagina. But they're not the only sex organs. Our entire body is a sex organ, right? So we talk to our young children about appropriate and inappropriate touching. Somebody doesn't have to touch your daughter's vagina or your son's penis to be inappropriate. Anywhere on the body that they're touched that they're not comfortable with and they don't want them to touch, it is inappropriate and they're being violated, right? Forcing a hug from an auntie or an uncle or a neighbor or a cousin, also inappropriate if the child doesn't want it, right? And what those things do is that they create an environment where force, coercion, becomes normalized. And that is dangerous for us. We have among the highest rates of incest and gender-based violence, intimate partner violence in the world, not just in the Caribbean, in the world, right? Our children, not just our daughters, but our sons, mostly our sons, our boys, are starting or having sex very early. More boys than girls are always having sex, right? Because socially, it's okay for them to have sex because they're the big man on the block, right? Cock sparrow in the neighborhood kind of thing. It's okay. That's part of the masculinity and the appeal of being a boy and a man. They're on their way to manhood. The girls, most of our girls, less girls than boys are sexually active, right? But it's also, when they're sexually active, it becomes something that is dirty, right? They're called bad names. They're called whores. They're called sluts. They're called loose, right? And we're not having those conversations to say, for boys and for girls, even when you are not ready, and even for adults, for any human being, if you're not ready to have sex, any situation where you do so when you don't want to and you're not ready, it's forced, it's coercion, right? And that is not how it is meant to be. Sex and sexuality is meant to be a beautiful thing, beautiful to be enjoyed. And we've corrupted it in society by keeping it as something to be ashamed of, something we are not supposed to talk about. What we do then is that we give it space to grow in the dark, right? This dirty thing, it's like when you have mold, right? Giving it any attention, it's there and it's just growing, and you're like, oh my God, where's all this mold come from? What is that? It's because it's been in this corner, just doing its own thing, nobody's giving it any attention, right? But what we know is that when we have open communication about sexuality, about sexual and reproductive health, it is protective for our children, for our adolescents, simply for the fact that they can come and they can speak up and they can tell you, this is what is happening to me. And you can have a conversation. You won't beat them to death, right? You wouldn't feel ashamed. You wouldn't make them feel like it's the end of the world. And so I really take this as an opportunity to invite our churches to have these open conversations with your congregations, right? Lady Anande spoke about the bill, the Age of Civil Responsibility bill. This is something that we must speak about. Apart from my affiliation with the Planned Parenthood Association, I am ecstatic, not particularly about the bill, but what the bill has done. The bill has created an environment where in all nooks and crannies, somebody has something to say about sexuality. That is what I'm most excited about, right? Whether or not the bill passes. If it doesn't pass, I will be disappointed. But I believe the bill has already provided a lot of benefits. It has helped to take sexual and reproductive health, especially among adolescents, out of the darkness. It has forced us to have uncomfortable but unnecessary conversations that we need as part of our nation building, as part of the development of our families and our community about sexuality. Sexual and reproductive health is health. Care and access for sexually transmitted infections, to prevent an unwanted pregnancy, to prevent HIV, simply to talk to someone, to have counseling about decision making, about sexuality, whether or not I'm ready to have sex, I like this boy or I like this girl. It doesn't mean, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what should I do. I don't think I'm ready to have sex, right? How can I have a healthy relationship? I've not had parents to model, right, a good, healthy relationship. Where can I find that? For me, that is what the bill is about. And I really, really invite all of us. We don't have to agree. This is not about agreement about the bill. This is about conversation. It's about dialogue. If we all agree, there's nothing to talk about, right? Can we agree on that? If we all agree, there's nothing to talk about. We're just a bunch of old friends reminiscing about something, laughing, maybe having a drink, right? But I think these are the times when, as a society, we can grow. We can grow. We're a young country, right? These are the kinds of topics and situations that help us to grow because there are differences, fundamental differences in what we believe and what we think must happen. Let's have open and honest and respectful dialogue about what this really means for us and what it means for us to have our young people have access to health services. I think it would be irresponsible of me to have this conversation today and not mention the bill, because I've worked in this area for so long, not just in Grenada, but in the Caribbean and in other countries, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, where their laws are different. And you see the differences that it makes when young people have access to health care. And that's just what it is. It's health care. Nobody is encouraging anybody to have sex, to use contraceptives. Nobody's doing any of that. And I started by talking about the lens that I have as a parent. Because God forbid my children, my son or my daughter, the day they feel that they can't talk to me, I would want to know that they have somewhere to go where they can get correct, accurate information, where they can get services that they need, right? And I'm going to close by giving you a very short story from the Planned Parenthood Association, where one of our clinical staff, or we have a nurse and a doctor, a young person, an adolescent, came in, and before we had a policy on providing services for adolescents. Now we do, before we didn't. And they turned the young lady away, right? Because she wanted to get on a contraceptive, because she didn't come in with a parent. She didn't come in with parental permission. She was turned away, and shortly thereafter, she didn't return with that permission, but shortly thereafter, they ran into her on the street, and she was pregnant. Because you know why? Turning them away and telling them no does not necessarily change their mind about what they're going to do, right? So what we need to do is to ensure that they have the tools, they have the means, safe spaces, people who are trusted, that they can speak to and access the care and the services that they need so that they can be healthy that they can contribute positively to national development, to their families, right? Because a lot of what we see in terms of the negative outcomes of sexual activity is because of poverty and ignorance and the silence that it has been shrouded in over generations and generations. All right? So I will end here. Thank you all for your time, and I'm always open to a good conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frame, for your insight into this issue of sexual and reproductive health. And I'm happy about the story you just gave, because in my research for this, I found that Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, and the World Bank both cited access to health services as one of the determining factors in the elevated rate of STDs and teenage pregnancies in the Caribbean. So I'm asking now, how do we provide this access? Aside from Planned Parenthood, what else can we do to ensure that our young people have access to the services and the information they need, leading to a decrease in the rate of STDs and teenage pregnancy?
So I want to use this opportunity to give a big push, put a big plug for health and family life education, for comprehensive sexuality education. We have it in our schools. It's not comprehensive, but we do offer it in our schools. As was noted earlier, there is hesitation. It's not an examinable subject. So you're not going to CXC and your subject number 15 is HFLE, right? So there is no sort of advantage or academic advantage or accolades. There is no feather in the cap for schools to teach HFLE in the way that it needs to be taught. And on top of that, our teachers are uncomfortable teaching it. So one of the things that we're really doing now, even from the Planned Parenthood Association side, is to help to work through and sort of reimagine comprehensive sexuality education. We've been having conversations with the Ministry of Education because there are some clear gaps. But the thing about these conversations, they don't just need to happen within schools, right? They must start within the families. But we have to recognize that if our families are not prepared, what are they going to talk about? They can't provide good advice and good guidance. So we need interventions that target or that are intended towards families and parents, not just mothers, right? But the family unit, whatever that family unit looks like. We need to have interventions for men and for boys. This is my biggest plug, right? We must have interventions for men and boys, particularly out of school, because what my research has shown, research with other colleagues in the region, is that 80%, over 80% of what we call teenage pregnancy, those are pregnancies that, with teenage girls, right? When you see adolescent girls, teenage girls being pregnant, we refer to them as teenage pregnancies. But over 80% of those pregnancies are caused by men and boys over the age of 20. So we call it a teenage pregnancy. But that is a misnomer. That is not accurate. The girl is carrying the pregnancy, going back to my grandmother, so we can pin it on her. So she's taking the blame, right? But she didn't cause it by herself. It's somebody who is much older who's causing these pregnancies. So that's why I say we must have these conversations with men and boys to help them to understand and to train them, give them the skills to divert their attention, because they should be protecting these girls, right? Not taking advantage of them. But these older men and boys have resources that these young girls need. So it tells us again there are problems in our society. So I go back to comprehensive sexuality education using an all-of-society approach. We must get our churches involved. Our churches are important. There are many of them, right? Churches are like pharmacies. They're everywhere. So we must have churches involved in the conversation. And our families, our parents, our schools, this has to be things that we can speak about confidently. And when we can't speak about it, we have to know where to forward somebody, where to refer them, where to direct them to get that information.
Thank you so much. My last question is for both ladies on this panel. Outside this room, Planned Parenthood and the church is enemies. The child of God and the child of the devil. We may not want to see it that way, but oftentimes Planned Parenthood clinics are picketed by Christians all over. We want to shut them down, they're no good, blah, blah, blah. But in listening to you, Dr. Frame, your end goal is the same as the churches. Functioning children, healthy families, prospering societies. So my question to you women is this: how can we bridge the gap between Planned Parenthood and the church, considering that we both want the same thing?
Well, I always say it this way: no one system has the autonomy in anything. We are a community, and there are those of us who have studied areas in deeper measure than others. And so the knowledge that we have generated from certain studies that are deeper than others can lend tremendous support and help in different areas, because we specialize in different fields. So we have to find our commonalities. We have to find the things that we can agree upon and pilot those rather than focusing on the divides, because as humanity we are going to be different. By nature, we are diverse people and we change all the time. But I think in our modern construct we have been doing a little better in collaborating for the common good. And this is why you have consultations like this. Because no one system, no one individual, no one church, no one organization, no one structure can do it all. And so we have to be a collective in order to get the collective truth so we can help in our society. I'm glad that we have diversities like that, because where the church may not reach further in, Planned Parenthood can reach a little further because they're dealing with the science of it. The church deals with the spiritual aspects. So everybody has their role to play. But what is important is that coming together and that collaborating so that we don't see a divide, but we see a unity in diversity.
That's really an excellent question. But from the Planned Parenthood Association side, we don't see the church as a foe or, an adversary or anything of that nature. In fact, we would love to collaborate with the churches and faith-based organizations and religious leaders. We're always trying to do that because we don't see what we do as contrary to God or to the country or to the people that we serve, right? We serve the same communities, the same group of people that we serve. Our clients are the members of your congregation. They have different needs, and we serve different needs, right? And so what we don't do in the Planned Parenthood Association, we don't judge our clients when they come in. We meet them where they are, and we try to meet their needs where they are. So I think that is something that we really hope that we can communicate to the faith-based organizations, that, we're a different kind of shepherd, if you will. Yes? But the fact is that there is a place for us in the community. There's a place for the church. Human beings are multidimensional. And the partnership with the faith-based institutions are just extremely important, and we want to cultivate that. So I'm going to make an open call here. Any religious organization, please, our doors are always open to you. Invite us to your congregation to have a conversation. If you feel you want to have the conversation and you don't know where to start, invite us. We have a group of over 100 young people who are very energetic. They're called the Youth Advocacy Movement. You may have caught them on GIS over the last 2 Sundays. They've started a 10-part series having open conversations about sexuality. So they've done 2 topics already, and it's going to be ongoing for another 8 weeks. So please reach out to us. We have people who can start having those conversations and start to help us to bridge that.
Thank you so much, ladies. And we have 5 minutes before lunch officially starts. The audience, the opportunity. If there is any questions, not just for the 2 panelists here, but Lady Trotman is still here, so you could ask her a question also. Do we have a mic we could pass to the audience, or you're going to have to come a little bit closer?
Right, good afternoon, and thank you so much for the presentations. One of them is just a clarity based on Dr. Frame's presentation. You gave a statistic, and I just wanted to confirm whether or not that's for Grenada. I think that's what I heard, but I wanted to confirm. So I think you said that the highest rate of gender-based violence in the world. Is that what I heard? And is that Grenada?
They're higher, but for countries that are not in conflict, Grenada is, yeah.
I'm sorry we don't have more time for this, right? Because this needs a lot more time to really flesh things out. But just a quick follow-up. Where are we versus the rest of the region? Given we're in a very close-knit community in the Caribbean. So where are we relative to the other islands? And are there things that they are doing that we can benchmark and improve our current standing?
Elaine, you may have to help me a bit here. In terms of the other islands, so clearly, if we're number one, right? But there are other islands. I mean, that are, in general, the Caribbean region is not performing well in terms of family violence, in terms of gender-based violence. What we have seen over the last 3 to 5 years, let's say, we've really seen a kind of acceleration and prioritization of efforts to address this issue. And so I believe in a few years, we should be really reaping the rewards of those actions. So in terms of law, in terms of policy, in terms of education. And one of the things people might say is that, well, because we've been doing so much in Grenada in terms of raising awareness for gender-based violence, That is why our numbers are so high, because now we're seeing more people reporting, right? So it's not necessarily that it's more than what it used to be 20, 30 years ago, but more people are now reporting because we're getting it out of the shadows. So there are certainly lessons to be learned, but as a region, we have a long way to go.
Dr. Frame and my friend Dr. Batiste, I think there were two very good presentations. And I sat there with bated breath, very attentive ear, listening. The last question asked by the moderator, of course, dealt with how do we bridge a gap because of course, Planned Parenthood and the churches seem to be going at loggerheads. I think you want a reasonable answer, or you want a real answer. And I'm here to provide the real answer, because you might be surprised, Dr. Frame, that my work started with Planned Parenthood. Right? When you were on Scott Street years ago. As a young man, I was an educator, a family life educator for Planned Parenthood. And I come from a very conservative church, Seventh-day Adventist, that have all the thou shalt nots in the Bible. All right? And so they were a big organization in Grenada here. And one of their young men was a family life educator. And in those days, my condoms were looked down upon, IUDs, we knew the whole shot. Once you said that, the church skinned up their faces, right? But because of my relationship with my church and my youth around the island, they trusted me. And so I was the one that they trusted to come in all the congregations and do sex education. Not only that, when they had the national camps, I was the one because they trusted me, right? Now, what are we saying? I think we have to build a relationship. And if we build a relationship with the clergy and all the other churches and whoever they are, right, then we may be able to bridge that gap a little better.
Thank you very much. Just to say, Dr. Frame, that you and I are both members of a particular organization, the Caribbean Family Planning Association, I believe it's called, and there are many religious people, clergy, who work, and as we heard, there is design, and we have to be intentional, and if we can both speak healing, intentionality, and design, meaning from different sectors, not both, from all sectors, I believe we would be a far way ahead in terms of our young people learning to value themselves, value their bodies, and have self-worth, and really have healthier relationships that will not always begin with sexual behaviors.
All right, it's 1:03, and so we'll have to shut off the question and answer section right here. Hopefully, in our small group sessions, we're able to continue having these discussions, continue to talk with our moderators, even over the lunch, as we talk through these issues that we have started and bringing to the fore, bringing light and honesty to them. Hopefully, by the end of the day, we can do justice in bringing true collaborative answers that can benefit all of us and the Grenadian society as a whole. So thank you to our moderator, thank you to our panelists, and thank you to you all for being a cooperative audience. One still? Oh, okay.
Right, okay? So I just want to, and it will be just short. Now I just want to say the church does a lot. But I think what the church needs to do is just probably get to the media a little more so you will see what the church is doing, right? And I just want to say to my dear sister next to my wife that you always want, you say we can always invite you. But I want you also to invite us as a church so we could collaborate and do this good work. God bless you.
And that's a wonderful note to end on. Collaboration goes both ways. Thank you, everyone, and have an enjoyable lunch. Do not leave after the lunch. We're coming right back to talk solutions to the issues we have been discussing this morning.